Is that
Great.
okay?
Yep, go for it. We're going to actually have Babu go first. I have to dial him in at 10 o'clock. So,
Yeah, you tell us the order.
yeah, that's what we'll do. Well, I was going to just sort of let people do a free-for-all. I hadn't even thought about the order, but we'll probably use the order. Is there an order in there? There's not an order in there. We'll just let people kind of jump up. But I think, oh, gracious. Oh, maybe, oh, that is. We will, yeah, we've got to just have him go first because we have to go back and call him on the phone, so we're going to be disrupted for a minute when he starts.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Good morning. That might be better. Good morning. I think we'll wait 1 or 2 more minutes. People are still getting breakfast and coming in, so we'll just wait another minute. We have plenty of time today to have spokes get together and start to do some planning. So the morning will be simple. I'm going to talk a little bit about hub update on the hub, and then Fen Zhao from NSF will give a presentation, an update on the BD Hubs program, and talk a little bit about what's new there. And then we'll have some lightning talks from a few of the spokes. Not everybody is available to be here today, but then there's time for the spokes to meet and gather, think about some planning and networking. And then we'll head out a little bit after lunch. In the afternoon, we have a steering committee meeting. I'll talk very briefly about that. And after today's steering committee meeting, we'll be introducing on the web. We'll get the new steering committee bios and everything up on the web so everybody can see who's going to be leading some of the governance activities for the hub going forward. So we'll just wait 1 more minute to start as people are gathering, and then I'll give you an update on the hub. We're good? Okay. You ready? Okay, good morning. Good morning. We're going to get started now. I don't see Fen in the room yet, but she'll be here momentarily. So good morning. Thank you for staying on for the second day. We're going to be mobilizing around the spoke areas today. I'm going to give you a brief update on the kinds of things I've been working on just in the first 6 months I've been here, and some thoughts on where some activities we'll be working on as we move forward. Then we'll have Fen talk about the BD Hubs program from NSF. We'll do some lightning talks after that. We do have a panel this morning before the lightning talks. Actually, we've got a panel of folks to talk about engaging with regional, national, and international organizations. So how the hub can engage at a regional level with new kinds of regional organizations that we're not necessarily tapped into yet. And then also some activities we've had and outreach with national and international organizations. And then the spoke lightning talks, and then time for the spokes to convene. So what we've been doing so far in the first 6 months so I've been on board for 6 months now. We're just launching the second year of the Midwest Big Data Hub. So it's been a very busy 6 months, as you might imagine. I've been able to come and visit many organizations and universities. We'll be doing a lot more of that going forward. You'll see a brief list as we go on. And I'll talk a little bit about some partnerships that are in development. And before we depart today, I want to come back to the mic and give some extra thank yous. But let me do just one before we get going. So a person not here today who did just unbelievable work to get this project put together in terms of travel and logistics is Laura Owen. She's not here. She's at the University of Illinois, and she's staff at NCSA. And so I just want to say thank you because she helped facilitate many people getting back and forth this week to the meeting and the NIFA meeting as well. So, okay. That's right. Thank you. So what's the mission that's been driving us so far? We'll be working on strategic planning over this year and really thinking about how to position what we're doing in a very grand sense. But what we've been doing really is the function of what the NSF's sort of vision of the hubs is, and that's to cultivate community. So developing effective cross-sector networks ready to utilize data and data science to solve shared problems, so data-enabled problem solving or data-enabled solutions for regional and societal interests, so scientific and regional societal concerns. So I'm going to talk about how we've been doing that. The other thing that we really would like to do over the next few years is help reduce friction in data decision systems. That includes enabling access to data sets. So both at the intellectual property, tech transfer, licensing, legal issue level, but also helping researchers and companies move data to shared spaces. And we've got some pilots in place for that right now, and I'll tell you about that in a few minutes. The other is to be a driver for economic development for the region, because that will be key to what the hub does for long-term sustaining of the organization of the hub. So our value is being able to build networks, but also to help really drive economic development, and that includes workforce development. Okay, so what we've been working on. So this is how I spend most of my time. I sort of tried to do it in order of the amount of time that I spend doing these things. But the first is really outreach and the partnership engagement. So lots of time traveling, as you might imagine, lots of time on the phone. But we also have people coming now to see me at the hub. So we actually just had a visit from an ag group from Australia who came to talk to the hub about potential partnerships there, as well as other regional industry calling to talk about data sets and how to engage the hub. As you might imagine, we have a lot of grant management to do. So we have the original Seed Corn grant, which is the NSF grant for the hub. The CCC has provided early, that's the Computing Consortium, they've provided early seed funding to enhance early career engagement with industry around data and data science. We leveraged that funding and spent a lot of money on workshops and training. I'm going to tell you a little bit where that went in a minute. And then we got the small grant to help facilitate and host the NIFA Digital Ag Data Science Summit. I spend a lot of time engaging directly with the spoke organizations, providing technical support, coordination, and help doing some planning and matchmaking for the spoke and community development there. The executive directors from the hubs meet on a regular basis. We do a lot of cross-hub collaboration and engagement with the federal agencies. We heard from Tim Schmidt from the Department of Transportation yesterday. The hubs, the 4 hubs, are on the phone with DOT on a monthly, sometimes bi-weekly basis, because we're really working hard across all the agencies within DOT to help them open up data for research and industry. The other piece there is in program planning and development, and that's going to become a focus for my work over the next year, and we'll talk about that this afternoon in the steering committee and then get that information out as those things develop. Okay, so where have we been? I won't spend a lot of time on this, but I've done both site visits with campuses and organizations, and then we've given a lot of talks on what the hubs are about. Essentially building these networks and partnerships, these multi-sector public-private partnerships to mobilize around data science. We were able to support representation at a number of other meetings that I couldn't attend, so SciDataCon, and you'll hear from Megan Lang this morning about how we might engage with international groups directly working on data science and data activities. The GODAN organization, which is the Global Open Data for Ag and Nutrition meeting, which Kathy Bayless attended. So we're grateful for people to be able to go out and represent the hub at some of these meetings and get us engaged that way. I'm off to Ann Arbor next week, and then I'll be in Nebraska and Minneapolis. And so we're doing both on-campus outreach and then giving talks at both the regional and national level about the hubs. And I do that often in concert with the other hubs. We often have panels where the big data hubs work together to introduce the hub mission and goals out to the broader scientific community. So the seed funding from the CCC, the Computing Community Consortium provided all the hubs, each of the hubs, with $300,000 last year to help generate industry partnerships and early career engagement in the region and nationally. So these are some of the things we facilitated with that money. The Digital Ag All Hands meeting was supported. The Data Science for Food and Energy at the KDD meeting was supported and mobilized by the University of Minnesota and IBM. And then Big Data for Health and Medicine, which happened out in Omaha. There were a number of other meetings as well. They're not all here. You can see them up at our events list, but I wanted to be representative in the kinds of things we supported with the funding from the CCC. And we are very grateful to the CCC for this funding. We were able to reach somewhere around 600 people through these small meetings. We funded about 10 workshops, 6 or so travel funds, and then a number of very specific training activities. So we reached a very large number of people, and the multiplier effect, once we did that seed funding for workshops and other training, other institutions put other money on top of that. And so we think the multiplier effect was 2 to 3 times the original spending. So this is very good return on investment for the CCC and for the hubs. For all the hubs in general. So we supported the initial Midwest Big Data Summer Institute, as did Iowa State University. So there's tremendous input, both space, in-kind, and financial support from Iowa State. The data quality in the era of big data, funded in large part by the CCC funding, but supported by the University of Indiana as well. And held there. And then the neuroscience workshop was in Ann Arbor and supported very much by University of Michigan and Midas. And then at Illinois, we had the food data interoperability through the food pipeline, very large industry engagement with that, and researchers from around actually both the UK and around the country. We've also funded a number, both CCC and the Hub funded a number of hackathons and training support, including sending a very large number of people to software carpentry, a couple of hackathons, and we look forward to engaging in those kinds of activities going forward. So this is a very short list. Let me start with the Open Cloud Consortium and why this is important. NOAA, NOAA funded, has developed a public-private cloud consortium to put environmental data out for public access. These data sets have not been, they've been available publicly in the technical sense, but not available in very easily usable sense, or with tools or with compute available. And so on the open side of that partnership that they put together is the Open Cloud Consortium, which is run out of the University of Chicago. And so we've partnered with them with the Center for Advanced Cyber GIS and Roger, the Roger resource. So Roger is a supercomputer designed specifically for applications in geospatial data. We have put a relationship together where Open Cloud Consortium is working with the Roger engineering team. We will be providing on Roger very large environmental data sets with compute available. We are now putting that, it's a demonstration project to start. We're putting that together. We're in the process of moving 2 terabytes of data, which will be very soon, 20 terabytes of data, and eventually a couple hundred. So this is a very good thing for the hub, and it'll be a demonstration project that then we will hope to replicate in other ways for other data sets to make them available for research and industry across the Midwest and the country. The Transportation Research Institute at Michigan, it's not a new partnership in terms of the hub in general and the seed corn grant, but we're working on some new things with the Institute with regard to how we're engaging with the Department of Transportation. And so when I visit there next week, we'll talk about how we move forward with the partnership with DOT. International Food Security Institute at UIUC, so Kathy Bayless is here and represents that. The reason we're partnering is in the Midwest, we have a number of food security centers and efforts across the Midwest at universities, one of the things that we're doing is talking about how do we begin to leverage all these individual activities into larger activities, so we're reducing funding and getting broader reach and impact. And so we've been talking about how we can start to do that. The Health Data Matters group from Cleveland and Case Western, nonprofit organization supported by multiple industry partners as well as regional and county governments to open up public data. We're talking with them about how to not only help them grow, but replicate some of what they're doing in other states in the region. And I mentioned already Agriculture Victoria. We just had a visit from them. They're very interested in partnering on a number of policy activities. So the other thing I spend very much time doing is individual matchmaking. There are a lot of researchers that come to me and say, help us begin to develop partnerships to put in proposals. I spend an awful lot of time doing that, not only in Illinois, but across the 12 states. Quick note on Spoke Awards. So, and then we'll get back to sort of some of those partnerships. The Spoke Awards, these are the 6 that the Midwest Hub engaged and is part of now. So the 2 at the top are the full Spoke Awards. The Digital Agriculture Award, the PI is actually a co-PI in our grant, Grant McGimsey. And so that's based at UND, but you'll see the other states there. Those are the co-PI sites. The Advanced Computational Neuroscience Network, that's a collaborative grant, so there are PIs across those 4 institutions. And so so each of these groups will be spinning up their initial workshops in the near future. We also have some planning grants. So the Big Data Innovations for Bridge Health being led out of Nebraska, Omaha by Robin. He's here. And the first meeting for that is next month. Then there's a planning grant coming out of Purdue on data quality for sensor data. Those folks weren't able to be here, but we'll be hearing from them at some point in the near future. And then we've got a planning grant being led out of the University of Illinois on community resilience and networks around emergencies and natural hazards. But we also were able to have an EAGER collaborate with us. So the EAGER grant from NSF on citizen science and air pollution and being able to develop data sets around air pollution in Columbus, Ohio. So those are the initial Spoke Awards that we have, and we'll be mobilizing those folks. Let me also say that one of the things we've been doing at the Central Hub is working with the Spoke proposals that were not awarded, so the PIs on the awards that were declined, to help them reorganize and reproduce their proposals either for the next Spoke solicitation or for other solicitations at NSF or other funding opportunities from other agencies. So what's next? The upcoming Spoke solicitation, we don't have the timing on when that's coming out yet, but it's coming in the not too distant future. We understand there'll be some changes to that, and we'll have a little bit longer time frame with respect to how that process works, which is a welcome thing, but we'll be helping facilitate the development of those proposals. Strategic planning, that's going to be a large part of year 2 activities. I'll be working with the co-PIs as well as the steering committee on that. And we'll be making those activities public through the website and our communication forum, which is currently a wiki site. We're looking at other platforms for that as well that might make it easier for community input. We'll be spinning up a number of new workshops and proposals, and then the partnership development, of course. Okay, so I'm going to leave that here. There'll be a number of opportunities to engage in the steering committee, and I think I just want to add that piece and then mention one other partnership that's in the works. The steering committee will be charged with, at the beginning, 2 specific subcommittees, one on governance and one on sustainability. Those subcommittees will be looking for expertise from around the Midwest region to participate. So participants in the subcommittees is not limited to the steering committee itself. The steering committee meetings will be open. The subcommittee meetings will be working groups to produce actual deliverables for year 2 of the grant. One will be in an initial sustainability plan. And so we'll be looking for new participants to join in that. There'll be lots of new work to do around the working groups, including the Data Tools and Services Working Group, which had really nice training sessions on Monday. We'll be looking for opportunities to do more of those things. I want to mention one last developing partnership that's not formed completely yet. We're in the process of finalizing principles of practice and then an agreement. But Microsoft Research has offered up to all 4 of the hubs a fairly large amount of Azure credits. We are working on a number of principles to help facilitate for the hub the best uses of those, including a number of educationally focused activities to make data sets available and compute through that service. And so you'll hear a lot more about that as we move forward with that. Okay, so that's me. I'm going to turn it over to Fen Zhao now to talk about the BD Hubs program specifically. Thank you very much. You have your slides up. Okay, I don't. Nope, that's not you. That is not you. Do you see your do you see your slides up here?
I think it called it Midwest something, which probably doesn't really help.
Midwest something. We're taking a moment to find slides. Maybe that's you. No, that's the keynote.
The other Midwest. That's probably not mine either. No, that's not mine.
Bear with us. Aaron, are you here?
Yes. What?
We're looking for Fen's slides for today.
Email
Please.
them to you, right?
We have them.
I can get them, but yesterday you said you were going to put them on there.
We have them. We need to load Fen's slides. Bear with us a moment. Thank you.
I can start talking too.
Fen
Right,
can
why
start
don't you-
talking.
Well,
She's good
is
at
there
that.
is there a mic
This will
here?
work. Yep.
This one will
Yep,
work?
either way.
Okay.
Thank
So while they're pulling up my slides, hi. I think you were all here yesterday when I gave my panel, but this time I get to talk about the program itself, the Big Data Hubs. And so my slides will actually focus on the new awards we made just a month ago. You'll get to see not only what the Midwest is working on, but what some of the other hubs are working on, what spokes we've awarded them. Before we get there, I just wanted to give a little bit of a background on where the hubs came from, since I see there were a lot of new people who weren't here at the last all hands. So the history of the Big Data Hubs program really stems from an OSTP, a White House initiative called the Big Data R&D Initiative that launched in 2012. And initially that initiative was very focused on federal funding of big data research. When we launched it, we launched about $200 million of new programs around the federal agencies in support of just traditional big data research, academic research. And that was combined with NSF, NIH, DARPA, DOE. We're all announcing new programs at that time. As the initiative progressed, we really started thinking about the fact that the federal government is only really a tiny piece of what we think about when we think about big data innovation, right? There's industry, there are nonprofits, there's all sorts of other players doing a lot of work in this space. And so it started to expand into thinking, how can the federal government start to sort of help accelerate some of that innovation, those innovation processes, other than just doing funding of federal funding of research grants, right? And that's when we started the second phase. We called that data to knowledge to action. It was sort of looking beyond research, looking to how we can not only fund big data research, but also think about how to bring more big data technologies into reality, into the real world, and also thinking about how do we attack some societal grand challenges in using big data. So in the second phase, we had a major White House event where we announced about, I think it was like 21 new major projects and almost $100 million of non-federal funds dedicated to those new projects. A lot of that was from the Moore and Sloan Foundation, with their big data grants out to various universities. Some of that was from companies like IBM, who are kicking off a major set of new projects with universities and with federal agencies. So that was an effort put together by OSTP, and as OSTP thought about the change with the new administration and thought about the longevity of efforts like that, we realized what we really wanted was the community to come together to make a sustained effort towards doing partnership projects like that, and that it couldn't just stem from the White House. It had to become a natural part of the ecosystem to come together, to break through those silos that are so obvious, and to work on projects like this. Oh, my slides, excellent. So that's where the Big Data Hubs effort came from. NSF decided that, okay, how do we fund a community effort to put together, I can do it, it's fine. There it is, to coalesce some of these partnerships, to break through some of those silos, to really start thinking about not just what are we going to do with, commercial data and, making advertising a little bit better with big data, but how do we attack those big grand challenge problems like the ones that the Midwest is focusing on, precision agriculture and food security and energy and healthcare, right? Some of those grand challenge problems that are somehow wind up being bigger than a single institution. So that's when we initiated the Big Data Hubs program, and through a series of charrettes, different organizations came together. This is the map that was created when the first Big Data Hubs were proposed, so this map needs to be updated with all of these new partnerships that Melissa was talking about in the previous presentation. But you can see that we have sort of a distribution throughout the entire nation. These are mainly the PI, co-PI slots, along with some of the senior personnel institutions. So really spread across all of the different states. A little bit about the hub activities. I think you heard about some of these. One, in this past year, it was that Microsoft awarded the hubs about $3 million in Azure credits that's split across all of the hubs. And so hopefully your different projects could take advantage of some of these Azure credits. We've had many of these regional all-hands meetings. We've had hundreds of attendees at all of them. And I think, we see, I would say that there's like a different mentality in all of them. You guys are very orderly and very nice and gentle. And in the South, it's like the Roman Forum. Everybody is fending for themselves. And it's just a very different attitude. So I love to see these all hands and see people coming together and people meeting each other. So it's fantastic. With the CCC, we had a focus on early career researchers in big data and giving them opportunities to experience and to network and connect and to work in internships and things like that that they wouldn't typically have in a traditional sort of big data research role. And so the CCC funded not only the Midwest, but several other hubs, and each hub has kicked off many different programs, different kinds of programs. Some are workshops, some are travel funds for attendees to attend their regional all-hands. The South did a internship program with startups in the South, where they placed grad students from various places to startups. It was very, very successful. So various different types of activities, and I love seeing the creativity of everybody in their region. We also funded a 3-year socio-technical study of the hubs. So this is 2 PIs and 2 postdocs working on, who are sociologists by training, who are working on sort of an ethnographic study of how the hubs are connecting with different communities and different organizations. So you might start seeing them at some of your regional meetings. You might see an ethnographer in the background taking notes on what you're saying and doing. That's okay. They're being paid to do that. That's their research. And we really hope from this study, not only do we get a view of the hubs, but really a view of what the ecosystem looks like in big data, and be able to, have them publish on that, and be able for the community to know what's the organizational structures, how are people meeting, right? What is the infrastructure that they're starting to use? I think that would, that kind of knowledge is, there's some academic study on that, but it's still very limited, and I think that would really behoove all of us, even non-sociologists, to really understand the space that we're all working in and the partnerships that are possible. So now I want to transition a little bit to talk about what we funded this year in terms of spokes. So here's the percent funding per region. It's fairly evenly distributed through the region. There's like, a little bit off here and there as, one region might have one extra planning grant or one extra spoke. There's still a few spokes that actually haven't been funded or declined yet. We kept some of the awards for FY17, so there are a few more announcements to be made potentially. So we'll see that in the next fiscal year. The percent funding per topic area you can also see here. It strongly reflects a lot of what we call proposal pressure. So we got a lot of smart cities proposals, so we funded a few more smart cities awards. We had a lot of proposals on the environment and sharing reproducibility and on health, and you see that takes up the bulk of the awards. We had quite a few projects on education, and I like to encourage more people to submit education projects as well. That's a very important part of the Spokes and Hubs program. EHR, which is our Education Human Resources Directorate, is co-sponsoring the program, and they're very interested in more education programs. We have a neuroscience spoke, which is part of the Midwest Hub, and several planning grants in cybersecurity. I also encourage people to look at cybersecurity as our secure and trustworthy cyberspace program is also actively engaged. In cybersecurity, it includes both, in sort of the NSF world, includes privacy projects as well. So that falls under our cybersecurity portfolio. So here's our second graph. This is the distribution of all the spokes and planning grants. So the stars are spokes. The gray stars are their sort of co-PIs or collaborative, non-lead collaborative projects. You can see, I think, the Midwest distribution is fantastic. You've covered a lot of states, a lot of geography within your spoke awards. And everywhere, there's no no city seems to be dominating, which I love. I'm a little concerned because Atlanta is a little overloaded, but everybody else is really doing, quite well in doing that geography, and that's what we really want to see, is different states being pulled in, unique partners being pulled in that aren't traditional NSF grantees. I think one of the attractive things about this program that the other directorates see is a way to reach other communities that they can't reach with their traditional funding programs. So that's what we really wanted to see is alternative researchers and participants being involved in an NSF program. So now I just want to give everybody here an overview of some of the other spokes that were funded, because I think you've probably seen quite a bit of information about the Midwest activities, but we still encourage people in different regions to do some cross-regional collaborations as well, right? It's easier to partner with institutions in your region because you don't have to travel as much. You can do your day-to-day meetings a little bit easier if you can do it within driving range. But there are some interesting projects that we are funding, and so it's worth taking a look. So first two is the ones that you know about from the Midwest, is the Advanced Computational Neuroscience Network. There's the Digital Agriculture Project. So in the South, and I'll talk a little bit about the South, we have a Spoke Awards, and I'll talk only about the Spoke Awards, the full $1 million awards, because we also have 10 planning grants distributed through the regions, and you can take a look online to see what they are. NSF did a press release that links to all of the different awards, so there you can see the abstracts of all of the awards, but I'll focus on the full Spoke Awards for now. So in the South, we have a project that's coming out of Emory. and with several partners throughout the South, several sub-awardees, really looking at how do you include data in patient care. So this is not predictive analytics for if they're going to have a disease. This is, you know, they have a disease. How can you have that data reflect back on them in their treatment process? So the preliminary pilot of this is looking at cardiovascular disease in African American and Hispanic populations in the South. And it's about people who've been diagnosed with cardiovascular disease. How can you use data like Fitbit data, sensor data, combined with electronic health records to improve their potential outcomes once they've already been diagnosed? And so the key thing here is that merging of health electronic records data with what we call data in the wild, that Fitbit data, that sensor data. Another project coming out of the South, this time out of Georgia Tech and the Smithsonian Institution, is a project on the Encyclopedia of Life. This is a large data repository managed by the Smithsonian on biodiversity. It has a lot of different kinds of data sets. It has some models. It has a real diversity of data, a lot of it unstructured text data. So the idea is to do a lot of, this is along the theme that we had in the solicitation along, how do we automate more of the data life cycle? This is about automated annotation, semantic annotation, VOL, to eventually use a technology called Watson Plus, which is a project that Georgia Tech has been working on with the IBM team, to eventually be able to use IBM Watson so that you can have QA on the information directly in Encyclopedia of Life. On one hand, that's to serve researchers working in the biodiversity area. On the other hand, it's to actually for educators, so that students can just ask questions about biology and biodiversity to the Encyclopedia of Life and have it give a human understandable answer back. So it's really, I'll just use the word nifty, which is an understatement for what this is. It's very ambitious, but really an interesting project about how do we take all of this data and make it human accessible to a wide variety of audiences. A final spoke that's being funded in the South is a smart grid data sharing project. This one has over 67 organizations submitting letters of collaboration. It's one of the largest spokes in terms of number of collaborating organizations. It actually, through consortium, through the individual utility companies, there's over 50 utility companies who say they want to share data that they have on their grid. They want to figure out a mechanism to be able to give access to that to researchers with the final goal of improving optimization of the smart grid, right, in various ways, stability, reliability, and optimizing the smart grid. They combine not only grid data itself, but also complementary data sets like weather service data, lightning detection data, right? And what's interesting about this is they actually do have several international partners, including a Brazilian power grid system project who is offering international data. So it's really going to be quite interesting to see how they manage the data sharing project, and I hope that they could be an exemplar for managing data sharing at a large scale, complex, large-scale data sharing. And this is led by Texas A&M with, 6, I think, different partners. So I can't list them all. Some of these projects are very complex and large in terms of the organizations involved. We, in the Northeast, and I'll start talking about some of the Northeast projects now, there is a education and project. And by education, there's usually two forms of education, both the education of the data workforce and the application of data science to education. This is an application of data science to education process led by UMass Amherst with, actually it's the PI changed too, I realized this. They're actually at UPenn right now instead of Columbia, and WPI as well. So it's UMass, WPI, and UPenn. They actually have multiple tracks on different ways that data can be used. Some of the tracks are use of data to predict future student events, right, from a lot of longitudinal data. They also want to be able to use data to influence teachers in their teaching direction from a lot of online data. So basically, what can you help What can you do with big data to help teachers while they're teaching, in the process of teaching their students? And also their focus is on personalized instruction. And they have a whole bunch of activities from hackathons to challenges. It's based on a few different projects that NSF have funded in terms of data-driven education and being able to apply that in novel ways and be able to expand some of those projects with new partners. Another project in the Northeast is on environment and health. This is being led out of Harvard, University of Pittsburgh, Penn State, and Columbia, with Harvard being the lead site. This is really about taking some major databases on health, sort of electronic health records, and then integrating that with information about the environment from EPA and NOAA, really, and then seeing if there are impacts on health from the environment and be able to trace that. So there's, once they're able to integrate this, there are multiple environmental health researchers basically waiting to use that data, and they've articulated several major questions within their academic field on environmental health that they will be able to answer now with this new merged data set. And the final project in the Northeast, which I think is quite exciting and something that may be of interest to everybody here, is a smart data sharing licensing platform. The idea here is, and this is being led by MIT, Brown, and Drexel. The idea here is to create a platform where you can go and click through suggestions and drop-downs, made suggestions and answer some questions about your data set, and it will suggest and create a legal document that can explain how you want to license your data. And the focus of this is, there's a lot of researchers out there with data, but to be able to share that data, they have to go through their lawyers within their university. It can take months. This wants to accelerate that process by creating some standardized frameworks for data sharing. And they are attacking some very difficult projects from the beginning. They're looking at health. They're potentially looking at smart grid data, which has specific legal requirements for sharing that data. So they're not just talking about data that doesn't have any PII. They're talking about how do we create those licenses even for sensitive data. So it's a very ambitious project. Paired with that automated creation of licensing, that smart licensing framework, is an actual data sharing platform that will ensure that those requirements are met. So you can actually pick the license, deposit your data in the platform, and when people extract data from it, it will ensure that those requirements listed on the license will be met. So it's extremely ambitious, and I hope it's going to be successful because I think it'll be something that everybody here can probably use. They're looking at their sort of first few test cases, so I encourage you to reach out to the team. The team is Sam Madden and Tim Crackett Brown, Sam Madden MIT, Tim Crackett Brown, and Jane Greenberg at Drexel. So if you're interested in, if you have a data set that you think would be a good pilot for this, I encourage you to reach out to that team. A project in the West is and this is the final region that we're going to talk about, is focused on reproducibility, specifically for a set of data in the social and ecological sciences. There is a computational model library that exists. Ooh. Hello? Okay. There's a computational model library that exists, and this team out of Arizona State is working to create a incentivization scheme to encourage people to be able to share data, for one, using bibliometric incentives. So how do you track the use of different models, the use of different data from this data set in the papers that are generated out of those models? Because as we all know, sometimes we create data, but we aren't given our due credit for having done that. So starting with their community in ecological and social sciences, they're trying to create a way of basically marking where data came from and marking that with the publication output. This, yet again, is a multi-track project. I've just described one of the track, which is the bibliometric database, but they also have several other tracks just focused on data sharing within their domain. And then the final project out in the West is called Metro Insight. This is one of our smart cities projects. This is out of UCSD, UCLA, and Arizona State as well. Metro Insight is really focused on taking real-time data streams from metropolitan infrastructure, sensor streams, traffic data, and be able to provide real-time decision-making systems out of that real-time stream. So it's really, part of it is focused on data reduction. So how do you take all of the sensors data and actually, reduce it to a point where you can do something with it? Moving towards, some agent-based modeling simulation. How do you pair the data with simulation systems? And then from those simulation systems, how do you come out with real-time decision-making support? They're focused on a couple of different projects, one on transportation as an application area, one on sort of energy efficiency in buildings as an application area. So here's my contact information. If you have any further questions on any of these projects, please feel free to give me a call. I always say, give me a call, and you will probably reach me because most of the time I am sitting by my telephone, and don't expect to go to my voicemail because I get a lot of things where I pick up the phone and people are like, I did not expect you to be actually talking to me. I don't know what to say. I will pick up the phone, so be ready to talk to me if you give me a call. I'm always reachable by email. Always happy to answer any questions. Think about if you have questions about, oh, my project doesn't quite fit the spokes, but it's a big data project. Is there any way for NSF to, support my project? Feel free to send me those questions as well, and I'll try to point you to the right program, officer to get your questions answered. All right, great. Does anybody have any questions? We have time for questions, hopefully. Do we have any questions? I see a question back there.
So I heard you mention interests or areas that you're looking for more proposals on the side of education. I wanted to know which side of education you were referring to. Is it
It's both.
educational experiences or understanding the quality and effectiveness of literature?
It's both. It's both sides. So we're both eagerly interested in new programs to support the data workforce, and that could be K-12, sort of data literacy, all the way to graduate students. I think, there's definitely focus on graduate students and cross-training and how do we train more graduate students in data, and also undergraduate. What does an undergraduate curriculum look like for data science? So I think it's both the workforce and this very large field of learning sciences and how data can interact with that. And the solicitation's not out yet. I can't give you a really a firm date on when that's going to be out, but there will be, as last year, a list of priority areas, or I wouldn't call them priorities, but suggested areas for people to take a look at and to encourage. And that will be a little bit different this year than it was last year. Any other questions? Okay. Great. Thank you, everybody.
We know which one you want to use. I've got 4 choices. Yeah, you do. Now 6. 9, really. Let's try this one. Testing? No, this one's.
You gotta turn it. I don't think I turned it on.
Can you hear me? No.
Keep talking? Okay.
Okay, let's try. Thank you.
I think we just need Beth for a minute. So good morning, everyone. This is the panel on community engagement. Growing the Midwest Big Data Hub with regional, national, and international organizations. I have 3 panelists with me, and what we're going to do is give each of them a few minutes to speak. Then I have 1 or 2 questions, and there should be time at the end for questions as well. Do you want anything that slides? Oh, okay. And do they have yours? Okay. Maybe you should, Greg, you don't have slides, you could go
I have
first.
slides.
Oh, you all
They're
have
on
slides,
the
okay,
laptop.
okay. Do you know which ones are yours?
They're on the desktop.
Do you want to come and see? Okay. So first up, I'd like to introduce Greg Monaco. He's Director for Research and Cyber Infrastructure Initiatives for the Great Plains Network, and also Research Associate Professor for Psychological Sciences at Kansas State University.
Thank you. So I am going to talk to you about a workshop we did about a year ago, and it was in response to the call for ideas for workshops to recommend what could be done in 2017 to 2020 having to do with computational cyber infrastructure. And this workshop was focused on the middle layer of organizations that exist, whether they're networking organizations or ad hoc organizations that have come together to fill gaps, and look at what could be done together to improve the cyber infrastructure landscape. Where you see computational in this, we also use data intensive and other adjectives for computational science, data intensive science, and so forth. So in particular, and I'll talk about networking organizations in particular. Networking organizations have a long history. We're celebrating 20 years of FARNet, which was one of the first outgrowths of NSFNet that became the Internet. And these organizations have been relatively stable on state-by-state and region-wide kind of layout. And these organizations were initially funded through the NSFNet program and later high-performance computing for advanced networking programs. But they became stable and were able to exist beyond their funding. And so they serve as good models, and they're also there for the long term. So the idea is that there is this middle layer of regional kinds of organizations, whether they're networking, whether they're the ACI refs, Advanced Cyber Infrastructure facilitators, or the Exceed Campus Champions, or whatever group they are, but they exist between campus and national resources. And the idea behind this workshop was, how do we begin to link up and work with these organizations to amplify or kind of intensify our efforts. So the process that we used, we had a number of we solicited white papers, we selected among the papers, invited authors. We had a meeting in Kansas City, Missouri. There were 39 participants. And we just recently developed the final report after several drafts. And it also served as that final report you may have seen as the basis of a part of a solicitation that recently. So we asked a series of questions from the community. What role can regional organizations play? How can they expand researcher engagement, particularly to underrepresented communities? How can they sustain timely, relevant education, and so forth? So we received responses from state and regional organizations. We received responses from campuses, minority serving institutions, researchers and research groups who want access to national resources, and other organizations that are interested in training and education, some of the things that we heard here. We got anything from individual to campus perspectives to large collaborative perspectives, and we got specific input on education and workforce development. So some of the main takeaways we came from it, that we're poised to use computation, and this could be data intensive science, as pervasively as we use email and the internet. Regional organizations are key, and this wasn't just said by regional organizations, this was said by campuses as well, people on campuses who want to reach beyond their campus borders. We're stronger by working together. We share common values and a common vision. And it's the personnel, the people, who are our most valuable asset. And the equipment comes and goes and so forth, but we have to make use of the people. So some of the challenges that were pointed out, and in particular, we had to really seek out contributions from smaller colleges and minority-serving institutions. And the perspective there was that many faculty come from training programs where they've had easy access to data and to computational facilities and so forth to advance cyber infrastructure. But then when they go to a small college and they want to train their undergraduates to use those, they have a great deal of difficulty. But there are a tremendous number of undergraduates who potentially could learn about utilization of the advanced tools that we've come up with. And reaching out to them is considerably more difficult than reaching those at well-resourced institutions. So we made a set of recommendations, and I'm not going to go through all of them, or there's a paper coming out in EDUCAUSE this month that highlights the recommendations that we made, the process that we went through, and discusses it in more detail. But in general, we had recommendations for the community at large. We had recommendations for regional networks, which are this, I think, in some respects, and organizations that do their job very well, move a lot of data, provide us with access to the national infrastructure, and are looking for other things to do, and are stimulated by going beyond their traditional boundaries of doing networking and physical networking. So we had recommendations for them. We had recommendations for other projects, including projects like regional big data hubs, for how to engage more effectively representatives from these regional organizations. We had some funding agency recommendations, and in any case, that was the extent of this workshop. As I mentioned, the copies of the final report are available from me, or they'll be published in EDUCAUSE later this month. And that is the information I had. Thank you.
Okay. So while Megan is getting set up, I wanted to ask a quick follow-up question. Could you say a little bit more about, you talked about adding personnel to do engagement at the small institutions. Can you give any concrete examples of what they would actually do to get into those? And I ask because I'm here representing many different things, but one of them today is the West Big Data Innovation Hub, and that's something that I think all the hubs, I wouldn't say struggle yet. We're not struggling, but we're trying to figure out how do we get into these places that we don't already have connections to do the most we can with outreach.
Thanks. Thank you. So there are several things that we've been doing, that we've been encouraging. So Great Plains Network exists across several states in the west of the Mississippi. And we have state networks that connect to us, and then campuses that are members of all levels of these organizations. We have dedicated personnel who come to meetings like this, who engage with our campus members, and we have an annual meeting that brings researchers together and brings people from, Melissa attended our regional meeting. So we have personnel who go out and actively coordinate efforts with members and with other regional organizations and with the national organizations to bring information to the attention of our membership. We've also been doing something with training, which is to, how many of you have heard of software and data carpentry? So as we've found that's become of more interest to our members and more useful. What we've started doing, we've got a pilot program where we've joined the Carpentry Foundation, Great Plains Network, and we're trying to build a cadre of software and data carpentry trainers throughout our region by partnering with our member universities and our state networks that connect to us so that we get trainers at all our institutions. And then they can partner together to do the training as often as they care to. And part of it is, one, we get a trainer at our state networks who now, instead of doing networking, is doing data carpentry training or software carpentry training, and they have to do the training together with someone else. So they do it together. They will do it together with a member of the university, and then that'll engage them more in actual hands-on working with professionals and training them in skills. So helping them to stretch their borders of expertise. So those are some ideas.
When you use these terms like data carpentry, there's probably people here that don't know what that is. Maybe you can explain what those terms are.
Oh, sure.
Repeat the
So,
question.
yeah, the question was, what is data and software carpentry? So, rather than hurting your thumbs with a hammer, it's really learning the software carpentry is about learning the key basic skills to be able to make use of computational resources with your to do your science. And data carpentry is learning to organize your data sets and so forth in a particular area, and they're hands-on. It's hands-on training, and typically it's done with groups of scientists who are from similar disciplines. And so everybody's learning together. It's 2 days of training, and the reports are, and I've observed the training going on. It's been very useful for people, and you can find more about it at softwarecarpentry.org and datacarpentry.org. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks so much, Greg. That was a great insight. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Megan Lang, a postdoc at NCSA at the University of Illinois.
Hello. Today I'm going to be talking about international big data in the context of results from International Data Week this past September in Denver. First, I'm going to talk about some of the barriers that were discussed towards getting researchers to share their data. Then I'm going to talk about the requirements that were identified at the meeting for overcoming these barriers, and then about the existing international and national data services. So first, the barriers. Sharing data can be a very time-consuming process for scientists. Particularly, it can take a great deal of effort to get their data in the correct format, to find the correct resources and people they need to contact, and to figure out where they can put their data and share it. In addition, there's very few incentives for researchers to do so unless they have a personal dedication to open science or collaboration. Also, the scientists are not being educated in the best practices for what format their data should be in and how it should be shared. And this means that the data they do share is not always in a form that can be reused by other scientists. And so it might as well be in a thumb drive at the bottom of their drawer. So requirements moving forward to overcome these barriers. First, you need persistent identifiers. These are unique, long-lived IDs that are associated with the data that allow the data to be cited for researchers to get credit for their data if it's reused, and also for funding agencies to track the impact of the research they're funding. These IDs need to be linked to the scientists producing the data, the research papers associated with the data, the funding agencies backing this data production, and the code used to either create or reduce the data. Next, it was identified that we need tools for data ingestion, curation, and discovery. On the data ingestion side, if these tools are easy to use, scientists are more likely to share their data. In addition, if the data is available and easily discoverable using these tools, more people are more likely to reuse the data. In addition, these tools need to be able to accept any kind of data, but extensible to allow domain-specific applications. In addition, it was identified that they need standards for data. This includes metadata format standards to make it easier to deposit data into archives and also easier for people to use the data once they get it out, if they know what format it's in and how to access it. In addition, the actual metadata vocabularies used need to be standardized. This is particularly important for interdisciplinary research. You may have two scientists from different domains who are using the same word, say temperature, but they may have a completely different understanding about what that word means and how that data was acquired. So you need these standardized vocabularies within the domains so that the domains can communicate with each other. So say you would have the data linked against this vocabulary which is published somewhere so that anyone using the data in the future can go back and reference what was meant. In addition, there needs to be standards for the domain-specific data formats, again, to increase usability. And in general, these standards need to be domain established and accepted so that they're actually used. Next, there needs to be incentives for scientists to actually share their data. There are currently some publications and funding agencies that require data to be shared, either at the time of publication or at the end of the funding. But this is only the stick side. We also need the carrot. So researchers need to get proper credit for making their data public, sharing their data so that other people can use it. And this means not only using things like DOIs, persistent IDs, so that people can cite data, but also changing the culture so that more value is placed on data that's produced. Finally, there need to be archival resources and services. This means something that can guarantee that the data will be around for some given period of time. The data needs to be easy to access and easy to discover. All right. There also, I heard this from several people at the meeting, that there need to be dedicated domain-specific data scientists and curators. This means someone who is deeply familiar with the data that they're putting into an archive so that they can be the bridge between the people providing the service and the scientists producing the data. Also, there needs to be early and often training of scientists in best practices so that when they get to the stage of sharing their data, it's not in a completely horrible format and that the process is not extremely time-consuming. It was also recommended that the archival resources be linked to computing resources. So this means maybe high-performance computing or just providing limited analysis resources alongside the data. Finally, there needs to be options for secure access and storage for the case of sensitive data, such as health medical data. All right. Now, the existing international data services. There were several services discussed at the meeting, but in particular, I'm going to focus on a few from plenary talks at the meeting. First, I heard from Edith Herzog, a former member of the European Parliament, about work going on in the European Union. She talked about how they are balancing the needs of researchers, the public, and politicians when they are working with data. In particular, she talked about the European Open Science Cloud, which will be a cloud-based storage system for managing and processing data. They met in April of this year and will be publishing their first report sometime this fall. This will be built on top of the European data infrastructure, which provide pan-European common data services for researchers across Europe. And this includes services like data access, deposit, sharing between collaborators in different countries, and long-term archival and discovery of the data. And all of this is serviced by a software package called the B2 Service Suite. And on October 3rd, actually, just a few weeks ago, they received a 10-year commitment to support from 16 research organizations across Europe. Next, I heard from Takashi Onishi, the president of Toyohashi University of Technology, reporting on the Science Council of Japan's Committee for Open Science Activities. This is a relatively new initiative, and this year they presented their recommendations for future development. This includes the development of infrastructure for interdisciplinary research, community-established strategies and guidelines, so the standards I talked about earlier. They also want to design careers for this data production and curation. And in particular, this is really being pushed in the area of disaster risk reduction, which is an very interdisciplinary field, covering everything from seismology to nursing. And a particular application that they talked about was the early detection and automated analysis of seismology data, which can then be used to automatically slow down high-speed trains in the event of an earthquake. I also list here a few other international and national data services. With the exception of the Commonwealth Scientific and Industrial Research Organization, CISRO, in Australia, most of these are domain-specific. So this is a reflection of the current state, where most of these services are being developed within silos, and now they're just now trying to reach out to other fields. All right, in summary, we need to improve the cost-to-benefit ratio to scientists for sharing their data. This can be done through the development of easy-to-use tools, better incentives, and early training in best practices. The data that is shared needs to be made discoverable and needs to be reusable. This means using persistent IDs, standards, and new archival resources. And while most existing services are domain-specific, there are some growing international and national interdisciplinary services, but they're still in their infancy. Thanks.
Great.
So Megan, I just wanted to ask you a quick question. By the way, thank you. That was great, especially for those who couldn't be at International Data Week, which was in Denver, which I really enjoyed as well. You talked about the role of publishers in being the stick. Did you hear any ideas as far as carrots go? Like how could researchers get credit? Is that NSF? Is that an institutional thing?
For the most part, what I heard discussed was that this needs to be a more cultural thing within the domains where they place more weight on data products, maybe just as much weight as publications, so that when you get cited for your data, that's a very important item on your CV rather than not just, okay, that's extra.
That's great. Thanks a lot. So now I'd like to introduce Beth Plale, and she was very humble in the bio that she provided, so I encourage you to go look at her website. She's got a lot of things she's involved in. And I believe, so even though it lists Professor of Informatics and Computing at Indiana University, she's also on the RDA Steering Committee and co-chairs the TAC for the RDA, which I believe is the hat you're wearing up here on this panel.
Yeah, I think that's a useful one, yeah. Good, thank you all. Beth Plale, Indiana University. And I want to talk about, this is Megan, thank you for the really nice introduction to some of the topics that go on at SciDataCon, of which the Research Data Alliance plenary was a big piece of that. So the whole week, it was a data week, and it brought together several different organizations that are just major organizations, networking organizations perhaps. Greg, I really liked your talk, to talk about these key issues. And I think the issues that Megan brought up are the key issues that are easy to say and hard to solve. No, but I think she did an excellent summary of those. So what is RDA? And what I want to do here, I've just got a few slides, but I just want to go through what RDA, the Research Data Alliance, is for those of you who don't know what it is. And then I want to tie that to in just a couple slides, to the Midwest Big Data Hubs, because I think what's going on in these larger organizations, particularly in moving along the sharing of research data, could could inform the services that we provide, beyond the networking services, within our own organization. So RDA is an international organization, and it's focused on developing infrastructure, where infrastructure is both technical and human, and activities that reduce the barrier to data sharing and exchange and accelerate data-driven innovation worldwide. So unlike some of the major organizations like ESIP, which has a similar mission in the United States, ESIP has more of an earth science focus. RDA is domain agnostic, and then RDA took on the international challenge, which is, just from an organizational perspective and objectives or success perspective, is a much larger scope of work. It has grown to close to 4,000 members globally, representing more than 100 companies, and it includes data science professionals from multiple disciplines, from academia, library sciences, earth sciences, astronomy, meteorology, and so on. So it is building what it considers the social and technical bridges that enable the open sharing of data to achieve a vision of researchers and innovators openly sharing data across technologies, disciplines, and countries to address the grand challenges of society. And here again, when I talked yesterday, I mentioned that the Research Data Alliance, and I up until last year was the chair of the Technical Advisory Board for the organization. We looked at the overall activity of the Research Data Alliance, which is, in grassroots working groups and interest groups, 54 of them at the time. There are now 73. And half of that activity, as I pointed out yesterday, was in addressing social and technical issues, or social issues, social and governance issues, and the other half were in technical issues. And that gives you, I think, a sense of when we say they're building the social and technical bridges, you can almost say about half that activity is social bridges and half is technical bridges. I think that's a reasonable way to think about what that activity is overall. So what does RDA do? Members come together through self-formed and volunteer working groups and interest groups, where the working groups are more focused, shorter term, and the interest groups are exploratory and longer term, to discuss barriers and potential solutions, explore and define policies, and harmonize and test standards. So again, when I say RDA is a grassroots organization, it is coming out of this notion that these working groups and interest groups form through individuals coming together to address a problem. And the collaboration is regional and international, and these are some of the subjects. We'll come back to this a little bit, but in fact, Megan, I think, probably touched on all of these: curriculum development, data citation, metadata, reproducibility, and so on. Who can join RDA? It is open to both individuals and organizations, regardless of profession, discipline. And the only criteria to becoming a member is that you agree to these guiding principles of openness, consensus, balance, harmonization, community-driven, and the fact that RDA itself is nonprofit and technology neutral. And the whole kind of technology neutral is so as not to, be the spokesperson for some large company's, direction or something like that. So that's where that is coming in. Membership is free, and you can sign up at this site. So, why get involved? I mean, there's engagement at the individual level and the organizational level, and there's obviously commitment and support at the national level with respect to getting the organization off the ground and sustaining it. At the individual level, and I can distinguish this. Well, let me go through the individual versus the organizational. Individuals can be observers, they can be contributors, they can be drivers. They can be members of working groups and interest groups. We have birds of a feather that are precursors to any of these other formal entities, the working groups or interest groups. As an individual member, you participate in providing comments on any of the outputs. The proper outputs of RDA are called recommendations. There is a community period for comment before that acceptance of that output. And there are plenaries every 6 months, of which the SciDataCon was the 8th plenary for the Research Data Alliance. Organizations join for for purposes of insight. Again, it is a leading edge community in terms of the discussions going on around data sharing, especially in international scope. Insight, adoption, drive, and they too can drive larger engagement through members in working groups and interest groups, but also can be a source for adoption and uptake. So I am an individual member of the Research Data Alliance. I also encouraged Indiana University to become a member of the Research Data Alliance. There's an organizational board. I am not part of that board, so I found value in being an individual member, but I also found value for my institution being a member, and it is one of these sponsoring members. So there's a distinction there. But I could also be, they could also be closer than how I've set it up at IU. So why would one want to join? An individual to contribute to leading edge thinking and global data infrastructure and development, working with collaborators throughout the world, access the extraordinary network of colleagues with various experience. I think this is the one place where we started to see people from the library community and people from high performance community and data science community all coming together around a shared vocabulary and a shared sense of what the problems are, and particularly, these communities had not had a lot of interaction before, but they address an important problem, the importance of sustainability and preservation of our data assets. The library community has thought about this a long time. But yet, if they're only there at the end, a lot of your metadata curation is in the beginning, so there's got to be that conversation, and RDA is a vehicle where those conversations come together. And I've found a lot of personal value in that. Enhancing the quality and effectiveness of personal work and activities, and actually that's the argument I'm making with respect to here is, this is the recommendations that are coming out of RDA are recommendations that have come about through a process that's a community-based process. So to the extent that we can inform what we do as a group here by those recommendations, we're connecting to something that's much broader than a single project that would go away in years and is organized by some people that if they go somewhere else the project goes away. There's all these issues. So that is, and I think there are many of us that are in the RDA because there are not many of the technical issues are not research issues, they're consensus issues. And if we would all just simply, for God's sakes, agree to use something, we could make a lot of progress in our technical implementations. And this is where we're at. Then there's also the social issues, but that effectively is a social issue as well. So some of us, again, we look to RDA to say, okay, this is the trend and this is where it's going, so I'm going to align my proposal. I'm going to say, okay, we're going in this direction from a technical perspective because that seems to be where the movement is. And so as a guiding indicator, I think RDA does that. It provides that. Organizational member, we talked about this a little bit. There's obviously the ability for early adoption of some of the outputs, and influencing those outputs is probably a key benefit. So you can see the growth. The growth has been quite precipitous over it looks like we started, I think it's about 2.5 years ago, something like that. So the growth is now up to close to 4,000 people. You can see the member enrollment is dominated by Europe. North America is slightly behind. I've seen this pie chart grow over time, and it is growing in its Asian and South American and African presence, but it is a slower growth there. But it has certainly grown with respect to where it started. You can also see it's also research dominated. You can see in the upper right hand or the lower right hand corner of the graph there. But we are seeing representation from project managers, librarians, professors like myself, IT specialists, students. There's a Healthy Early Career program. And then a couple last slides here on the RDA as a whole. There's organizational affiliate members, and these again are people who, the organizational members there's a small sponsorship that is renewed regularly, but then there are also affiliate members, and that's what you see in the left-hand corner here, of which a couple of them were the co-sponsors of the Data Week that Megan was talking about. So, and just really quickly, the next plenary is coming up there every 6 months, and the next plenary is in Barcelona in April. So let me just point out the outputs that come from RDA are called recommendations, so it's recommendations with a capital R. There are other outputs, but the recommendations are the primary outputs, the flagship outputs. So it's RDA equivalent of a specification or a standard that other organizations, the term other organizations use. So that is, again, that's the key product. There are also products that are created from the working groups and interest groups that are called supporting outputs or other outputs. I won't go into those, but I just want to pull out 3 of those recommendations that I think are useful in the context of our discussion here. One of them, Megan, thank you for laying the groundwork for this, is around persistent identifiers. There's a couple products, a couple recommendations that came out, one of them on PID information types, which is, there's a little bit of detail here. I'll show you a diagram on this, but there are generic services that we could build around a handle service. And again, this is a little bit detailed, but DOI does a great job in connecting, as Megan pointed out, in connecting people and publications and data sets. It has issues that have some people looking at other approaches. DOI is based on the handle system. These other approaches are also based on a handle system and looking at building up minimal metadata around a persistent identifier for other uses besides citation. And so the PID information types is a recognition of that need. And what we're seeing with the use of DOIs are people are assigning them at a higher level. But then when you assign things at a higher level, which would be something like at a collection level, you run into problems that all the other stuff isn't identified properly or isn't identified with a global identifier. So this other approach, PID-based approach, recognizes that more needs to be identified than one would do by using a DOI system. That works together with the data type registry. I won't go into too much detail, but the two of those are paired up and working together. I'm also, I should say, I'm working to increase the adoption in my role as RDA, now that I've stepped off of the Technical Advisory Board. I'm working on adoption of RDA products, and I'm working specifically targeting these two right now. The other one, and I'll show you one more diagram that comes back to that's a little bit out of order, but the other one is a conversation we had yesterday. It actually came up a couple times yesterday when we talked about how we share our data sets, and RDA from the beginning has had a group on legal interoperability where they've grappled with public data, licensed data, copyrighted databases. And a recommendation has come out just recently. So, I would, if indeed, and I also within the Midwest Big Data Hubs, I'm the lead of the data sciences ring, and if indeed, in the original conceptualization of the Midwest Big Data Hubs grant, we said, well, this kind of hub-based agreement could be something that would come out of the data sciences ring. And I would suggest, if indeed this is something that's useful to the hub as a whole, that we look to these kinds of recommendations and don't look to our universities, which, my goodness, we won't get out of that one alive. Let's look to our university, let's look to these kinds of organizations that have worked this thing through. It has the benefit of working it through with an international perspective. But I think there's a lot that can be, and I've seen some of their work already, I think there's a lot that can be used to inform our internal discussions here. And then just finally, a little bit, like I say, a little bit out of context, what these RDA PID services might look like. I've colored things in 3 colors here. That dark green in the upper right-hand corner is running at San Diego. This is a small example. We'll actually be talking about this at the NDS meeting next week. There's a little workflow server running at San Diego there. And that's the application. It's doing rice genomics kind of sequencing work. And then the orange is the project-specific data repository. And then the stuff in green is the RDA PID related services. Down in the lower right-hand corner, there's a handle service. That's obviously not something coming out of RDA. That's something coming out of, this is like DNS level naming of entities that actually happens. It's an international organization that issues and governs handles right now. But so what's reusable and absolutely application and project agnostic is what's light green. So we could say, to the extent that we're building out our services within the hub for things that again, it has to facilitate objectives that are important to us, let's look to these PID services and make those available and start to use those, because those are those inherently incentivize interoperability of data sets in ways we can go into in more detail. So again, just to wrap things up, and RDA isn't the only organization, the organization I know, but these organizations are trying to move things forward in community-specific ways that I think we can benefit from understanding and thinking about adoption. Whether or not it fits in our context, maybe we are just a network of people, and that's the benefit of the big data hubs. But to the extent that there are lower levels that can be beneficial, looking to organizations like RDA can be helpful. So, okay.
Thanks so much, Beth, and to all the panelists. So with about 15 minutes, I'm going to open it up to questions from the audience, but I, of course, have my own. And please also make sure to use that little box. Just press the button so that the people on the live stream can hear your question.
This question is mostly for Megan, when you were talking. So talking about sort of moving into a new regime where researchers can get credit for publishing data sets earlier, right? Okay, so there's a stake model, but still there probably several papers that need to come out before the data set might get included, or at least a seminal paper first. So try to get data published, stand up, so you can see, earlier in the cycle. Has peer review been discussed at all? Because I think, at least, so I'm in atmospheric science or earth sciences, to get data sets to be accepted by the community and then to be valued by our community as something that counts. Peer review really helps with a lot of different things, right? And I wondered if that's been discussed.
So you're talking, hello? So you're talking about peer review of the data itself?
Yeah, I was thinking not just, so sort of the standards being accepted, but that, a lot of more smaller groups, not the big, like for instance, Climate Data Center was discussed, and they have ways of vetting big data or big field campaigns, but as derived data sets come out of smaller research teams, if there's not a bunch of publications already with those, we would want, I think peers should be looking at that to make sure that some basic standards of science have been fit, as well as data science, right?
So I didn't hear that specifically talked about at the International Data Week, but that's definitely an interesting idea, and that's something that sort of happens within astronomy. Astronomy data sets can be very large and involve a great deal of people, and so you have many people working on the data sets and ensuring that they're in the proper format. So I definitely think that is something that could be done, yeah.
Okay. This is a question for Beth. Is RDA connecting with the federal call for sharing data in terms of the discussion around standards of practice and so on? Is there a conversation going on between RDA and NIH or other federal agencies?
So there's definitely conversation going on. And now I believe the calls you're talking about are the open data, the calls for open data. I mean, there was the Federal Executive Management, OSTP. And, so those things, obviously, I think RDA is responsive to it. I also think the NIH and NSF are also, and these other organizations are also trying to be responsive to that through through making, so I think maybe it would manifest itself through these other entities that actually try to implement it. So the National Science Foundation says, well, we need data sets in whatever form, and I think other people can, our NSF advisor program manager can speak to this more eloquently than I can. But I mean, to the extent that there's some mechanism for sharing data sets, and NIH the same thing, so there's some program or whatever for becoming responsive to that OSTP memo. How do those get implemented? And I know RDA is one of the sources where these consultation and conversations have been happening. But no, there are clearly conversations going on there. And I do think that RDA is being looked at as a source for community-driven best practices emerging.
I was just going to follow up on Gretchen's question. There actually is an open data journal for agricultural research that allows people to submit their data and metadata and a description, and it is peer reviewed. There's editors, there's reviewers, and it comes out periodically as a journal. So it's out of Wageningen University, ODJAR.
So I'll just use biological amplification. So I guess another question for Megan. I guess one of the things, and this is sort of a crass question, but one of the things that agencies have been wrestling with is who's going to pay for the indefinite curation of its data. And I was wondering if there's different agencies that come up with different solutions. I was wondering if the Europeans or the Japanese or others you've looked at have a solution that we should consider.
So one of the suggestions from actually President Onishi, I believe, was that this be rolled into sort of the allocation when you get the grant for the data. So this would be on the funding agency's part, so that a certain part of your funding is actually meant exactly for archiving the data.
So I can say a little bit more about this too. I'm executive director for the National Data Service. Okay, I'm in the frame now. As executive director for the National Data Service, I track what other national data services are doing, and I want to plug real quick the RDA's working group on national data services. That's a fantastic place for looking at these issues. I don't think that any one country or consortium has a perfect answer, but certainly there are places that are doing a better job at funding long-term preservation. I can tell you that a lot of the Nordic countries are on 7-year cycles to fund their curation services, and that they've been doing it for several decades, and I would love to see the U.S. Adopt something like that. How we get there, that's another question.
Let me just add to that. And I've heard the president of Indiana University talk to this, but the scholarly record, the university, one of its main goals of society is the preservation of the scholarly record, and it's been done through the massive academic libraries that we've got. We've got major academic libraries, and that's the preservation of knowledge. Data is a form of knowledge, so to the extent that we can speak to that, and I think librarians see data as part of their domain. I mean, I think what we have to do is not give them every dang blasted thing we create, because that's not realistic, you know. we need to be a little more selective. But I think once we do that, I think that is one of our sources, because and I think one of the other complications is when a library buys a book, they buy a book, you know, but when we have a data set, it's the data set I created with 10 of my colleagues in 5 different universities, and my university is going, ooh, wait, you know, what am I taking here? So we have to work through those issues, but I do think there is a solution there once us as communities can come together and work through those issues.
And let me add to that, I did see several examples where it's half federal funding that comes from like a Department of Education or something like our National Science Foundation, and the other half from specific institutions. I have not seen any examples where it was the researchers paying, because I think we know that's a pretty tough sell.
Can I add one thing to that as well? Regionally, Great Plains Network, several years ago when NSF put out their data retention mandate, we got a lot of requests from our members about, well, what are we going to do about this? What are other universities doing about it? And through that, we ended up partnering with the Greater Western Library Alliance, which is also a member organization and covers actually a great deal more territory than we do. But out of that, we created a partnership to, not to archive data for long periods of time, but we've investigated that together. And what we found is that by working together and by working as two regional organizations and working together with our members, that we've been able to do things on behalf of our joint membership together that we couldn't do individually.
Yeah, and thank you for that. And there's also the DEEPN, the Digital Preservation Network, that is utilizing member institutions for what they call dark storage to reduce the overall cost of data storage. And because you need replication, they've got a cost model where you can store your data. It'll automatically be replicated and automatically, in multiple spots. So universities are coming together to try to solve that with a cost model. It's similar to what, yeah, very good, yeah.
So I have a question for Ben. Number one is, how do RDA members find each other right now to form special interest groups? And second question is, how do you plan to support this activity going forward as you scale out the organization? Because the growth is quite consistent, and probably you'll get more members, and this organization might not work as good as it is now.
Yeah. So how does one find like-minded people? The interest groups within RDA are a focal point for people coming together. They're exploratory by nature. And I think in the discussions that go on there, and I didn't talk to this in my talk, but there could gel a specific problem that one could take on. In fact, I'm going through this right now in one of the interest groups, where then it makes sense to do a 12 to 18-month working group on it. So there's going to be some small group of people. So I would say you're going to meet the people by going to an interest group meeting where the discussion is fairly broad. You're going to find a common interest within that, and then it makes sense to apply for a working group, a short-term working group, which will produce a recommendation as an output of that smaller effort. The sustainability of the organization as a whole, it is the main entity for being sustained is the Secretariat. There's a Secretary General who is a full-time position. It's Mark Parsons, who comes out of the Earth Science community. And the Secretariat is probably about 4 full-time people. The cost of the Secretariat is being funded by multiple countries, European Union, United States, and Australia right now. And that's a very difficult model to achieve sustainability over a longer term. But there is a council whose job it is to solve that. But that is a difficult problem, especially when you introduce the international aspect to it.
And this panel title in the description, we did promise you ways to plug in. So this is a good way to talk about some of the interest groups that I think especially have synergies with what you're doing with your digital agriculture theme. Some of the RDA working groups include wheat data interoperability, rice data interoperability, agri-semantics, global agriculture, global water, and education and training. So there are a ton of opportunities to find like-minded people working on issues that you're probably interested in as well. On that note, before we close, any other opportunities to engage that for the members here that should be highlighted in your organization? Well, I'll put in a plug. We have the National Data Service we have a workshop next week in Pittsburgh, and in April we'll be back in Chicago. So I hope that you'll consider coming to that. Any last questions before we break for the Spoke Lightning presentations? Okay, thank you, panelists.
All right. Yeah, you too. Yeah.
Hello, folks. At 10:15, we're going to do lightning talks for the spokes. Those spoke presenters, if you would come up to the front, we'll grab a couple extra chairs. It'll be so much easier, and we'll get through it more quickly. So the spoke presenters, I think there are only 6 of you, possibly 7, but I think maybe 6. If you could come on up and grab a chair up here. We're going to line up the slide decks right up on top. And we're just going to go in order. So, of how the slides are lined up. Thanks. You can grab a share, Joe. It's going to be a minute. So, in a minute, I'm going to call Babu, who's the head of our business analytics. We have to dial him in, so I actually have to call him up. And who's ever going to go second? We're just going to line up the slides. And then, so one of us is going to have to just do Babu's slides for him. You'll hear him over audio. We've got to dial it to his phone, and we'll hear him over audio, and he'll be able to hear us with the microphone. So that's first is Babu, and then Jill and Aaron are going to line the slides up. Jill's going to work with you to just put the slides in a line. Thank you. Slides in a line. So Jill will get the slides in a minute, and I'm going to call Babu, and we'll be off and running with those. We have a number of meeting spaces available for the spokes to convene and have whatever sort of networking, community meeting you'd like to have. There's plenty of space in here for 3 spoke groups. We've also got 245, 246, and the lunchroom, so I think we've got plenty of room for everybody to convene after the lightning talks.
gonna.
I heard my name was.
Aaron, you did put two spoke slides up here yesterday. Do you know what those are?
Did I?
Yeah.
I did not put them in.
I think so. Okay.
Honestly, I don't remember what I got sent. So I put all the slides that I had received on there. Let me go back and look.
Okay, so the DJAG spoke lightning talk is right here.
Yep.
Hi, buddy. Hi. How are you?
Good.
Jill's got my slides. I do have a
Okay,
few
great.
slides.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Yes. Oh, good.
More in the order of the lineup. What? I have slides. Two slides. That's what they told us.
I was given the keynote on Joe.
Where Jill's got all the slides. Where did Jill? Jill, do you have all the slides? Cool.
No way that you can do this talk. No way. That's just
So, do I need anything?
No, I think you're okay.
Oh, you're kidding.
All right.
so happy. He said, "This is really all right." That was an interesting experience. Little translation.
Oh, right.
Yeah, it was like a deal. I was thinking opposite the colors. Very interesting. And what was even more was the whole, and this is, the audience is the thousands of hospitals, CEOs. And they're reading out the 5-year plan.
Yeah.
You know, this is
Right, your
it's
5-year
top
plan,
down.
right.
And what are we doing quarter by quarter in 2017? And they were literally taking my slides and driving them into the 5-year plan.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. And so the discussion was, it's all this big data stuff going to make doctors. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it.
Anyway, so why would they be worried? I mean, they're all in.
Depending on how the phone call comes through, we might have to. If it comes,
No.
it won't come out. It'll come out of the house. Okay. I'll just crank up as best
It's
I can.
fine.
Yeah.
It's
Okay.
it's fine.
And then after lightning talks, once, do you want me to stop streaming? After lightning talks. After lightning talks, you want me to stop streaming?
Yes.
Okay.
Thanks.
Okay.
I don't know where your slides went. Did you have slides? You didn't have slides the other day. Then I have them right here. No worries. I got them. I got them. Because I just remembered you didn't have slides the other day, right?
No, I didn't. Not for the panel, but
That's
for
fine.
this
We
I
got
did.
you. We
Okay.
got you.
Well, I'll tell you, we have a big shortage. I mean, of course, we need to we have maldistribution, you know, all these things.
We're missing the transportation. He's not. Okay, good enough. All right. So I'm gonna call Babu, and we're still okay for time. Yeah, I'm gonna call Babu. We're still okay for time. We'll start in a couple of minutes. They're lined right up here. They're lined right up, and so would you mind driving his slides, Joe? Or do you want me to come back and
I can do that.
They'll open. So, and I've just lined them right up here.
Okay.
So everybody's right. He's already open, so let's do that. Let's put you. Let's move this out of the way now. There we go. How's that?
Good.
Okay, everybody's lined up. Great. And looks like that's what we'll do. Let me just get these. It looks like Brian, and then we've got Elise, and then we've got Jim. And that's a different file. I just didn't know if she needed it. So we'll put the files together. Great. All right, so you're all lined up. Very good.
Okay. And I'll advance it for.
If you, and he'll tell you when.
Yeah.
I'm going to go call him right now. Thank you. You're going to go. I put you just down in line.
That's fine. Thanks.
I'm trying to get some.
Hello.
Hello.
Hey, hi Melissa.
Hi, welcome. Thank you. We still have a couple of minutes before we start. And we can hear you fine. Basically, we've dialed you into the audio system for the whole room. So we can hear you, and as long as we talk into the microphone, you'll be able to hear us. Joe Coletti has graciously offered to advance your slides. So if you we've got your first slide up there, your cover slide now. And then we'll start actually at 10:15 because that's when we're on live stream. So at 10:15 we'll get you going. I'll just do a very quick intro and say we're going to do the smart lightning talks. And then when you're ready, again, you're on your first slide, and you just tell Joe when you want to advance. Super, thank you. All right. Okay, we're going to get ready for our final session. After the Spoke Lightning talks, we're actually going to end the live stream. So this is the last bit that we'll be live streaming for those of you at home or at work. I have just 2 more thank yous I need to do as we're wrapping up, and then I'll introduce the lightning talks. So first of all, we've had a team of graduate students here taking notes and doing the Twitter thing, and we really appreciate their time and effort. They have collected notes on the entire meeting from the get-go, so thank you. Thank you very much. Candace Turner has been out at the front desk for the last 2 days, and so we're grateful for all of the coordination work happening out front, so thank you for that. And for everybody else that's helped pitch in, because as you know, there have been moments where I've said, "Hey, I need some help with this," and everybody's been so ready to and willing to help. And so, thank you very much. I think we've had a great meeting. And now the last bit is for our spoke groups, our communities, our thematic communities, to give us a very short report on what they've been doing, what they've been thinking about in terms of governance and development activities planned, and where they'd like to go forward. Following the lightning talks, they'll be convening here to do some planning work. So the first person to report is Ratna Babu Chinnam. Babu is the lead of the business analytics spoke. He's calling in from a distance, and so Dr. Coletti is very graciously going to advance his slides, and I'll let you start. And Babu, are you on the line?
Yes, I'm ready.
Super.
Melissa.
Okay, thank you.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
I hope all of you are enjoying the program so far, the all-hands meeting so far. Sorry that I'm not able to attend the event physically. Attended the last event in March. I have an advisory board meeting this week for one of our global programs, and I'm leading these meetings. And these meetings were scheduled nearly a year ago, so I could not change the dates. So the spoke is being led by leading faculty, analytics faculty from across the Midwest. In the interest of time, I'm not going to basically provide all the names. You can find the information on the Hub website. Very quickly, the primary focus of the spoke is to assist the private sector in developing and deploying successful big data-enabled business analytics platforms and solutions. In that sense, I believe we are a unique spoke across all the 4 hubs and certainly within the Midwest Big Data Hub. So if we can go to the next slide. So I will update you on 4 different topics. First, I will start off with industry engagement events. So the universities that are part of the business analytics spoke have been busy trying to organize a variety of symposia, workshops, one-day events across the Midwest. And I'm going to basically share with you information regarding 2 sample events. At Wayne State this past March, we ran the Big Data and Business Analytics Symposium. It was a 2-day event which attracted over 300 participants from nearly 100 companies. This is an event that is primarily aimed at industry, and we had over 30 speakers from a number of leading Midwest companies. And we also brought in all the major vendors in the big data space, as well as several startup companies as well. You can find more information on the link that I'm sharing, which is bigdata.win.edu. Mike Fry, who is also one of the leads for this business analytics spoke, has been organizing a number of events at the University of Cincinnati. So the event that they held on May 20th, which they called it the Analytics Summit, brought in over 350 participants. So this is their 4th event, and same with Wayne State. We had 3 events, and we're currently working on the next year's event. the University of Cincinnati also organized another Predictive Day event on Feb 29th, which again attracted over 300 participants. Diego at Northwestern organized a one-day analytics exchange program, and which attracted a number of participants from industry. It was a very successful event. And there are similar events at Michigan State and at University of Minnesota and other schools as well. So we, I believe, are doing a very effective job in trying to engage the industry and provide very relevant information to companies from across the industry sectors. As for academic and training programs, the programs are doing quite well. I mean, for example, the University of Cincinnati program is attracting over 600 to 700 applications per year, and they are being very selective and admitting some 100 students into their business analytics program. The same is true with the other programs, the business analytics program at Michigan State, the business analytics program that's being done by Diego at Northwestern, and several other schools. Wayne State itself is in the process of rolling out a new data science and business analytics program for next fall. And similar to Georgia Tech, we will have 3 tracks, one focusing on the business piece, and another on the analytics, and the third on big data platforms. Besides full-blown MS programs, all the universities that are involved within the spoke are offering a variety of training events aimed at both industry as well as students. And the popular topics include data visualization, bringing in vendors like Tableau. These workshops are extremely popular, are always full. And looking at things like data mining in R. And much of the industry, whether we like it or not, do most of their analytics in Excel. So those are popular topics as well. And topics such as data management are also being covered. So these kinds of events are being organized across the Midwest by the partner universities. In terms of industry partnerships, currently we have close to 60 companies at the enterprise level collaborating with universities that are involved in the business analytics spoke. New companies such as Goodyear, BASF, Henry Ford Health System, Limited Brands, Magna Powertrain are getting into the fold. What is clear over the last year in working with these companies is that there seems to be quite a concern in terms of intellectual property in wanting to partner with product groups. So at this time, it appears that a lot of these companies are interested in working with their partner universities. For example, Target is working with University of Minnesota. GE is working with University of Cincinnati. So there seems to be some concern about what will happen to their intellectual property. And Melissa and I had some discussions about this. So at this time, it appears that much of this engagement will continue through their local partner universities. The final update is we did put together a planning grant proposal to NSF. Unfortunately, it was not funded because the feedback that we have received is that they kept asking for what would be novel from a research perspective. And our impression is that the hub is primarily aimed at not basic research, but getting the private sector as well as the non-governmental and governmental agencies to leverage big data analytics and big data platforms and big data technologies. So for the time being, I guess we're going to rely mostly on funding through the private sector to continue our activities. Next slide, please. So in in terms of next steps, we are trying to strengthen our relationships with vendors, both small and large. And this is because we need to make sure that our graduating students are familiar with platforms that are being employed by the private sector as well as the non-governmental and governmental agencies. So in particular, the different universities are trying to work with SAS, Cloudera, Oracle, IBM, and others. We have some upcoming events. So University of Cincinnati, 2 days from today, is organizing the Data Science Symposium. We're expecting some 300 participants again. At Wayne State, we are planning for our 4th Big Data and Business Analytics Symposium, so we are expecting 300 to 400 participants and over 100 companies to be present. In terms of industry partnerships, we will keep engaging industry and want to basically bring in more companies into the fold. And finally, in terms of support and collaboration with the hub itself, the universities are interested in access to more big data computing platforms so that we don't have to necessarily duplicate, I guess, these platforms at every university. So if there is a way to access platforms and software, that would be great. Second thing is, a lot of the business analytics applications call for external data. While there's a lot that can be done with internal data sets that are available within these respective companies, it's important that we also leverage, complement the internal data sets with external data sets to improve the, to essentially generate the 360-degree view of a particular problem, whether it be supply chain management or whether it be, marketing or a service application. So in that sense, if there is an opportunity to make available data sets around the lines of, for example, digital exhaust data, in the sense, customers, the footprint that they leave on the different social networks or on other websites, if there is a way to collect this kind of information, that data can inform a variety of analytics applications. Same is true whether data is more readily available, but any kind of major event data, meaning what kinds of events are taking place in different cities and how might they affect operations, whether it be transportation or whether it be, retail operations, things like that. So these kinds of public data sets will be quite useful, definitely for the spoke. And we continue to look for funding partnerships to be able to collaborate with other spokes as well as the hub itself to bring about more resources to the spoke operations. That is my update, and be happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Babu. We've got time for just one question, maybe. Any questions on the business analytics spoke? Okay. All right, thank you. We're going to move on to the next one. Thank you very much, and I'll see you soon. Thank you.
Sure, Melissa. Bye.
Bye.
Well, good morning. My name is Joe Coletti, and I'm representing the Digital Ag Spoke. We'll give an update about our activities and then where do we want to go in the future. We did spend a lot of time last year organizing ourselves and really accumulating a list of participants both in the public and the private sectors. We agreed early on that one of the things that we wanted to create and put out periodically would be a listing of funding opportunities that are from the federal government mainly, but also from different from different foundations and that sort of thing. So that is a periodic document. We just came out with another edition. Like all the other spokes, we were engaged in the sort of the stewardship activities around actually soliciting planning grants and then the submissions to the spoke proposal, the $1 million proposals. And then one of the neat things that we were able to help out Danny and Ed in the all-hands meeting last March, the first one. That we did that, one, because we wanted to be engaged and wanted to really know more about all the spoke and the rings, but also because we were anticipating doing an all-hands meeting later in the spring, which we did do. And we also had 3 CCC projects that were funded. UND, North Dakota, had an early career summit. We had one associated with a digital ag all-hands meeting spoke. And then University of Iowa, just on Friday and Saturday, completed their hackathon. And so that was really very fortunate and very important for us to get those early career folks through those activities. We also had, there were 2 submissions on the $1 million proposals, several planning grants that were in development. There was $1 million proposal that did get funded out of NSF, and that Melissa has talked about that, and we're really in the throes of getting that all set up. That's really in the future. Our all-hands meeting in Ames was attended by over 100 participants. We had 10% of the participants were from industry, 10% non-government organizations, and the rest from the academies or for academia. There were about 20% of all participants early career individuals. So that was, again, very, very, very impactful to get whether they're grad students, postdocs, or people from industry earlier in their career to that meeting. We did and have had a number of formal and informal discussions or inquiries by different entities, a number of industries that have said, what's this digital ag spoke about? How can I join? What's going on and that sort of thing. The Ag Gateway entity is a not-for-profit organization representing over 200 agribusinesses, and they did attend the Digital Ag All-Hands meeting, and it became clear that they were saying, well, let's start talking and have a relationship between the industry, our organization, and the Digital Ag Spoke. At Purdue, there were several events. Certainly the OATS project with Jim Krogmeyer, that's the open access data activity. And then also we had, there was an opening of the new phenotyping facility at Purdue, and then also this North American Plant Phenotyping Network inaugural convening event. And that again is about getting a lot of people working in that genomics, phenomics plant arena together and talk about everything from what it is they do, but also the data that they're collecting and the commonalities across that. The last item there, the cultivation corridor. This is an Iowa-specific type of activity. The executive director just a week ago reached out to me and said, we want to know more about the Digital Ag Spoke. These are DuPont, Pioneer, Syngenta, Monsanto, John Deere, a number of other major and minor corporations around agriculture, food, and the bioeconomy. And so there is a growing interest in connectivity that is occurring in that arena. For the the future, we need to work on formalizing our leadership and figuring out how formal do we want, what sort of government structure and that sort of thing. How do we rotate members, because we want to make sure that this is a community that is really engaged and is getting something out of this spoke. We have to launch and get activities underway for the NSF Spoke Award. Get feedback from Iowa, University of Iowa, about their digital ag workshop and see what worked, what didn't, what do the participants want in the future. And then, there's going to be a number of activities around looking at these databases that are plant related. And then another area is really the animal science. There's a number of animal science activities that are ongoing, but we weren't really successful in getting that sort of subgroup within agriculture to the table or to the either submissions for the spokes or planning grants and that sort of thing. And then there is going to be an example there, the Data 4 Big Data Summit. Greg Monaco had indicated there's going to be a very specific digital ag component, and there'll be other workshops too that are part of that spoke proposal next year as well. And then one of the things on that relationship between the spoke and the hub and the spoke, certainly being able to, for the hub to be a repository for our master lists of participants and also any type of documents summary of what we do at our various convenings, what results that we've generated from that. And then also for the hub to communicate to us about these larger other spoke and other ring activities so that we are engaged and knowledgeable and be able to pull out from whether it's the biomedical or transportation. There's going to be nuggets of information and stuff that can come from the hub to our spoke and all the other spokes in the rings. And then also sharing the funding ops. Certainly you'll be engaged in knowing probably from Fenn what's the timing for the release of that RFA, what's the process, is it any different from last year, and that sort of thing. And then the last thing is the spoke back to the hub, and we're very keen on sharing the information, even the funding op list that we put together, results of our different convenings, and then what it is that the different tools and data sets that are in amalgamation or connection throughout our activities. So that's a summary from the Digital Ag spoke.
Joe, I have a question. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just,
Sure.
It sounded like you guys have a lot of interest with the industry, that portal you were talking about. I mean, I wonder if you can explain what they're interested in, because that could be really informative to the other spokes, like Biomed, for example.
Well, and I can ask my colleagues from the spoke to add, but they're interested in the plant and animal genomics, phenomics. That's clearly an area that they know that a lot of that innovation discovery around CRISPRs and all these other techniques that are allowing for them to move their product faster with known traits, whether it's corn or beans or an animal to market. That is certainly and clearly one of the areas of interest. The other is in precision agriculture and unmanned aircraft systems. How to integrate from satellite to 400-foot elevation UAS systems to ground sensors, how to put that into a network. And then it's not just that you create more maps for farmers to say this is what my yield in a field looks like, but it's really moving more of those data into the analytics so that you can predictive products that can come out, whether it's from the Climate Corp or actually driven from our universities that often are the source of the models that go into these entities, these services that companies like the Climate Corp puts out for farmers.
Thank you.
And I think you're...
Okay.
Is that it? Oh, that's...
That's Bernice.
That's me. Okay.
Why don't we let her go?
Okay.
That'd be fine.
Thank you, such a gentleman.
Sorry, Bernice.
Okay, now which am I using today? Okay, all right. So I'm the lead on the Network Science Spoke, which is unique to the data hubs. It's the only one in the country as far as I know. I can save a lot of time because Fenn did such a great job talking about all of the things that were, is that better? Okay, all of the things that were funded, and so I can go through those. But I wanted to start out by, is it this one? Yeah. I wanted to start out by talking about what we're looking for in terms of collaborators. We're happy to lend out, have you borrow network analysts. But I think one of the arguments that we made when the Midwest Big Data Hub went in was that network science is not just a method. I know people are interested in it as a method, and we can help out with that, especially if we can matchmake between people who are analysts and people who have data that is based on relations. But we're also looking at network science as sort of a four-pronged area. And we're interested first in how systems self-organize and what the dynamics are, what causes those systems to change, and how those connections differ over time. And so network science focuses on a particular kind of phenomena about linkages. But of course, those linkages have effects. And so we're interested in it. Network science for us is an explanatory perspective that can be used to sort of understand in a different way why there are certain kinds of outcomes, for example, health or crop growth or other things that the Midwest Big Data Hub is focused on. But as Babu said in his discussion, that there is something unique or maybe even perhaps weird about network science, which is that the data that we use are all relational. Now, this is exciting in a way, but these kinds of data are less available. They're often proprietary, so it raises particular questions about the data access that we have. And so sometimes network science requires data collection at quite a large scale, but it also calls for reimagining standard kinds of data and putting them in relational terms. This does then lead to what people think of network science as, which is a set of novel analytic techniques. So we're interested in anybody who has interest in any of these four dimensions of network science. In terms of current initiatives, as I said, Fen did a great job. We collaborated with the Health Spoke and particularly University of Michigan on the Advanced Computational Neuroscience Network, which was funded. In addition, we partnered primarily with the University of Illinois on one of the smart cities or smart communities projects, which was looking at community well-being and distress and how network systems are well organized for natural emergencies, but not so well organized for community emergencies that deal with community breakdown or social events that are particularly problematic. In addition, we organized and worked with the University of Michigan's ICPSR to develop workshops on network science. We did 2 this summer, and they were well attended. So that we think we can be a center for offering those kinds of things with our satellite connection with University of Michigan for the hub. In terms of future initiatives, yesterday you heard Caterina Scolio talk about the idea of having multiple platforms to analyze health data for contagious disease. And she's looking, I know, for partners, particularly health departments, but also other faculty, our analysts who are interested in that. We would like to add to our portfolio of the teaching effort for the Midwest Big Data Hub to offer a specific big network data workshop next summer in addition to the 2 that we already offer. We'd like to think about having some mechanisms maybe coming out of the hub. We've made some arrangements with some of the CTSIs that exist in the universities that make up the Midwest Big Data Hub to have them build in scholarships in some of their pilot studies for their faculty to come to these and pay. We don't want full scholarships, and I think any of you who have run these kind of programs know that if they have full scholarships, come the week before and they're really busy, they say, I'm not going to go, right? So we want them to have some buy-in, but for a lot of junior faculty, this is really an important thing that they need, and they don't really have the spare funds to do this. The final thing that I wanted to mention is something that we're thinking about, which is a network data science approach to college success and retention in terms of thinking about education and the future workforce. Most of the studies that have been done or the data that has been done on college retention has focused on institutional data. And while those are very useful, I think that they're missing one of the key issues that underlie the reasons why students drop out. It's related to academics, but it's not, academics are not the underlying cause. Rather, one of the things that happens with emerging adults as they go to colleges is that they fundamentally change their networks. And those networks have to do with social issues, sexual health, mental health, access to academic help, etc. So all of the bumps that we think about that are not recorded in institutional data sets. And we're thinking about a unique partnership with some of the most important national organizations that are interested in these other issues beside academics in terms of college. Organizations like the JED Foundation that focuses on the 1,000 college suicides that we see each year. Organizations like Bring Change to Mind, which is devoted to trying to see colleges as safe and stigma-free places. Focusing with the Kinsey Institute on issues of sexual assault, which then has tremendous ramifications for both the women and men who are assaulted in terms of their ability to do their academic work. So the partnerships would be unique because they would be based mostly with nonprofits rather than industry and try to focus on this. And I just wanted to end by saying that the impetus, and we're really interested in partners for this. And one of the reasons that we started thinking about this is there are some findings coming out of our university right now that suggest that for pre-meds, for the future doctors in the United States, it looks like there's a very early leak in the pipeline. And surprisingly, that pipeline, that leak is gender. It's not race and ethnicity. What happens, what the research is showing, is that the leak in the pipeline occurs within the first 6 months when women pre-meds do not form the same kinds of networks that include other pre-meds that men tend to do. And it increases their dropout rate away from the pre-med line to other kinds of majors. We suspect that as you go through the 4 years, there will be different reasons for dropout of different diverse groups to the medical pipeline, which results in the kind of maldistribution of gender, race, and ethnicity in our medical workforce. So if anybody's interested in that, please contact us. Thank you. Any questions? Okay.
Okay, now we can do the biomed is next. Let's see. Let's see if I can help you find it. Okay, manufacturing. You can do that next.
They're supposed to be in order.
We're just looking for biomed here, the missing biomed PowerPoint. Is it, did you move it on?
We didn't have it. It was already up. Aaron? So, did you send the biomed to us?
Yeah. Yeah, I sent it to Jill.
Oh, and it was on there. Yeah. So it was on the.
So let's see. I mean, you know, we could do. You want to do manufacturing now?
Well, we still have to find one. Who's it?
Yeah, thanks. It's just got a bunch of. Oh, good. Thank you. Melissa saved the day as usual here. Okay. Super. Thanks. Thanks for your patience. So let's see. I can see. This is harder to do than it looks, Bernice. My name is Brian Athey. I was participated in founding this. It's nice to see everybody here. I'm the biomed science spoke lead. That's because I come from biomed. So I was really interested in what you had to say because we admitted 53% of our class were women last year in our medical school. So just think what it would be if you've got the pipeline fixed. I'm the spoke lead, but it's in red because I'm not going to be the spoke lead for long. We're going to recruit somebody here, so that's the latter part of the talk because you can't be the co-PI and the spoke lead at the same time, which I think is smart. You know, one of the problems we have with biomed is the scope is so big, you know. we have the discovery stuff. And, you know, it's interesting to see how similar that is with ag. You know, we have the omics and the integration and the multi-scale and all that kind of stuff, and network science plays a role in that. Discovery. And then we have the bringing it into the clinical and translational research enterprise. And Bernice mentioned the CTSIs, and I think that's an untapped resource that we ought to be thinking about, because there's so many of them in the Midwest, and they're already collaborating. And then you have all the stuff out in the community, you know, the public health informatics, and the, you know, we had some great talks there and some good activities in that sphere. And, you know, comparative effectiveness and this kind of thing. So the scope is large. But there's ways to leverage things. I mean, for example, the Precision Medicine Initiative, they're going to be recruiting 1 million patients into the PMI, the Cancer Moonshot. I mean, all these things are just great. And then we have really elephants in the room. This privacy issue in IT security is so big, and we need the data scientists for that one. We're not going to, the biomed guys are not going to solve it. And we need industry collaboration. So, so there's, and then Keith Elliston over here with Transmart Foundation talked about the best practices for data sharing and, you know, open source communities and open science, e-science. So there's this scope, and what we have to do is find pockets of interest and expertise across the hub that are already doing things and cultivate them and leverage them into our activities. There's no way we can just kind of grow this. This is all moving very quickly. And so that's the idea. Now, you know, we have made some progress. This ACCN workshop with CCC funding has been mentioned. But that's truly a collaboration. So it's going to Indiana. You know, I was involved in putting that thing together, and I wanted it to be a collaboration across the sites. And so we're moving it to Indiana, and then we're going to move it over to WashU and Case Western and so on. This thing's going to be kind of a traveling road show, and that's going to help these guys bond. We had, I don't know, 150 or so people at the event in Ann Arbor. I thought it was really good. Ivo Dinoff was the brains of that one, and he did a great job. He had an unconference. You know, I was very nervous. I had to go to another meeting. I knew he was going to be sweating it, and he admitted that he did, but it worked out well. You know, we've got the big data innovations for Bridge Health, you know, in Omaha, another one. So there's some activities. Then resources. Open Cloud Consortium. It was mentioned earlier in the environmental data area. Well, their main thing is biomed data. It's right down the street. Bob Grossman is committed to working with us, and we should take advantage of that. Several of us are already members. I was the first guy as the University of Michigan signatory to join the Open Cloud Consortium. So we have free access to the TCGA data. You know, we don't have to put it up there. Others can do it. So I really want to push that. You know, health data management. I don't know much about it. We got to learn. The Transmart Foundation is here. They're committed. And they work closely with I2B2, which is all with this on the CTSI sites. Everybody's using it. So these things can go viral if we get smart about it. Now, spoke elements to explore. Obviously, new partnerships and collaborations. We got to know what's out there. We need a list. You know, we know some of it. We'll even say. Data sets. We talked about data sharing. Well, some of us actually have data sets. The Health and Longevity Study at ICPSR, the Inter-University Consortium for Political and Social Research, ICPSR. We have it there. It's available. There's other data sets. It's not like we're starting with zero. We spent so much time in Transmart Foundation getting normalized geodata sets. They're available. They're on the web. They're fully documented, metadata. It's not like we don't have data to share right now. We actually do have some. We can get it up on the website. Now, we need to know about proposals that are under development. And understanding who's really interested in this interface, this public-private interface in your institution. We had one of our fellows here from our Medical Innovations Fast Forward group. Ray, are you still around? You know, he came yesterday. You know, our kind of business engagement folks. At Michigan, we're working with them, and that's really helping us at this interface. So I encourage that. Now, you know, we want to have another workshop coming up in the spring. Here's some potential themes. I really want to make a push for the geospatial health informatics theme, which has a big data flavor to it. Anytime you see a map and data and, you know, analytics coming out, it's geospatial. And, you know, it gets it out into the community. But, you know, it also can help us understand stratifying patients It can help us understand health disparities, all this kind of stuff. So that would be my guess of a good one to go. But there are others, you know, sensors in the home, cell phones, big area right now. Integrating that in for deep phenotyping, because what we're doing now, electronic health records, are never going to be enough. You know, some of the specialized methodology that we use in the bioinformatics space, you know, there's a lot to it. There's a lot of interest there. You know, it'd be neat to compare notes with the plant guys. I mean, we're doing CRISPR-Cas. They're doing it. It'd be neat to find out. It's the same methods will hold in both cases, I can assure you. And then workforce development. And, you know, and I think we could really partner with Bernice and what she's doing in that area. Turn the tables on these data science certificate and master's degree students and where they're going. I think we should look at that. I mean, I would like to work with you on that. We've got all our certificate students. It would be great. So there's lots that we can do. In this, you know, in my field, bioinformatics, you know, we train PhDs and master's students. They all show up in my office, you know, with their degree in hand and say, gee, you know, what do you know about data science? You know, that's what they're asking me to do. It isn't all that bad, but it is what they're asking these young people to do when they go to industry. And we need to expose our students more to this. There is absolutely no question about it. Our disciplines have to partner with the education and training resources and rings here. You know, and Beth gave a great talk. I mean, this little mountain thing that she showed is very similar to what we're doing. We need the mountain picture, though. You know, yeah, that's super. We're gonna co-opt that. So, you know, there's team. One of the things that I've been able to do with the Spoke leadership is get to know young people, and this has been a theme. Joe pointed this out. Bernice pointed this out yesterday. We had some assistant professors sitting here. They were doing so well. It's all about our young faculty and helping them get these things. That's what we're committed to. And you know, we know, who have been around the block a few times, that you, especially these days, you don't hit it the first time. So we need to stick with these teams that are already forming and help them get to the finish line. They have the passion, they have the interest, and it fits in. So we're committed to that. Okay, so we need two things. We need, sorry for this, this is, you know, when you take pictures of at Google. I haven't figured out how to do that yet. But, you know, some of you data guys could help me with that. But anyway, you know, it's not just the leader. We need the fearless leader that's going to put in the time. You know, that's got some gray hairs or no hair or that kind of thing. And, you know, who knows the community, is willing to put in the time. We really got to work with you. But we also need the young people in the teams, you know, that are already out there to cultivate this. We cannot grow this from scratch. We're much better off identifying the interest that lives within our institutions and helping those folks integrate in with the Big Data Hub. I think that's really, to us, a sensible thing to do. So that's my spiel, and I'm happy to take questions. Oh, you know, I'll answer my own question. I put one thing I forgot to say it here. I did a little data analytics on FanSlot. I want you to note that 29% of the funding that went into the, you know, Spoke proposals went into the health area. You know, if you take the 20% from health and the 9% from neuroscience, that's 29% of the pie right there. That's like a quarter of the pie went into the biomed area. Think about it. It's big. You know, and NSF doesn't really do a lot with basic biomed. That's NIH. So think out into the community. Or think specialized opportunities like the Brain Initiative or something like that, which was frankly what we did with this ACCN. I went around and was looking for neuroscience because we were told at the PI meeting that they were going to fund that specially above and beyond. So we've targeted that. And targeting these things makes sense. Because that was a calculated thing. So I just wanted to throw that last thing in there because I want people to recognize that. Okay.
Jim, you want to? Yep, that's the one.
All right, let's turn to the exciting world of manufacturing. So our Our spoke proposal did not get funded, but we are chugging along anyway with the Midwest Manufacturing Spoke. Just a couple of quick updates. In our proposal, and what we talked about a little bit last year at the last all-hands meeting, were 3 or 4 really key focus areas we came up with in terms of data that is critical to get unlocked in the manufacturing industry, because it is an industry that has huge IP concerns and you know, a lot of the ability to do data analysis and data science activities is really in a deadlock situation. So we said first there are machine and factory equipment data, there's materials data, transportation, logistics, and supply network data. And we said, you know, where's the low-hanging fruit? So we said we think that is factory data, and that's where we wanted to go first. So we worked with some of our partners. I mean, at DMDII, you know, we're talking with manufacturing companies every day, big ones, small ones. And so we worked with some of our partners to get this this kind of hallmark data set unlocked. It is 75 machines from an operational factory, actually is spread across 2 factories. And these guys are you know, a small company that's in the business of producing batch jobs. A lot of it for the aerospace industry, some for automotive, some for energy, and some miscellaneous. And you know, there's a lot of these kinds of manufacturers out there. You go to them with a design, and they'll make, you know, 500 for you. And so these guys have these machines that have just been running constantly and breaking periodically and getting material change-outs and operator interventions and all of these things. So 24 gigabytes worth of that data over the last 4.5 years is what these guys have been collecting, but not really doing much with. So we worked with them to release that data. We've kind of aggregated it and curated it and put it into a format and validated it and stuff. And we're going to be releasing that at the end of this year as part of our data platform launch. So that was super exciting. I don't know if folks are familiar with like Mimic 2 in the healthcare, but I think of it as sort of a very analogous, you know, a true, real kind of original reference data set that researchers have been starved to get their hands on. So we were super excited about that. Next, we're kind of looking at the material science space. We've been working with a lot of the folks at ChiMat and Northwestern and having those conversations. We also held a hackathon at UI Labs, summer fun. It was a good time, and I was surprised. It was a smaller community than I expected. I had hoped to get like 100, 150 folks there, but it was more like 50. And, you know, people came in and out over the weekend. But in the finalist teams, I think there were about 35 or 40. But it was a much higher quality audience than I expected. It wasn't totally uninitiated people. It was people that really cared about manufacturing. And so we had people come in from over 7 different states, including the CTO of Salesforce IoT flew in from California and met some of his analytics team that drove up from Tennessee, I think. And so they met, they formed a team. There was a 16-year-old kind of local area savant. And yeah, over 7 states were represented. So that was really cool. And we got some great applications that really were just banging data analytics against this data set. In addition to that, we've started thinking about this data as a service concept. You know, to us, it's wrong to think about data as just a pile of bits that you download and then do what you want with. We think about it, another analogy, but sort of more like a plumbing system, you know. You turn this pipe off and the water's diverted, the data's diverted over here, right? And it mashes into this other data set. Now you've got a new flow of data. And so we've launched a pilot activity to sort of start experimenting with that kind of concept. In addition to that, you know, we've been connecting with a lot of regional partners. I went to the Materials Society. They had a working group session up at Northwestern, and so we've talked to those folks about, and they're having another one at the end of this month. sort of a little bit larger group, I think, about data analytics and materials. And this is a big deal in manufacturing because ICME, Integrated Computational Materials Engineering, is becoming really the next phase of materials engineering and manufacturing properties assessment and that sort of stuff. We've also worked with NIST. They're pushing the boundaries on cloud-based design and manufacturing, so-called CBDM. So we've been pretty proactive there in that community as well. As well as helping with some of the planning and workshopping sessions for a new Indiana independent-led institute on virtual validation and verification of systems, which is a huge problem for a lot of manufacturers and designers. In addition to that, we kicked off a number of pilot projects, some focused on CAD data and manufacturing geometry, as well as some real-time streaming data, which we're not playing too much in that space because there's already a bunch of players, you know, GE with Predix and 4Cam, and there's a lot of people that are dealing with connecting the factory floor. But what does that look like as you start to aggregate it from multiple sources and pool data for benchmarking? That's maybe a role that we see as sort of interesting for us. And our partners are across the board. Some are government, Air Force Research Labs. We're working with them on a project, the Manufacturing Readiness Working Group, as well as a whole bunch of just different engineering companies. But it's a huge community, and we're really just scratching the iceberg. And if we start to think about the secondary communities, we're really not tapping into them as well. Many of the institute members at DMDII are aerospace focused, and you know, so there are or large machining focused, you know, agricultural equipment focused folks like John Deere, Caterpillar. There are a lot of consumer manufacturers that we could be a little bit more interesting in our interactions with. There's also the materials groups, the machine learning folks that are starting to get in this game. So when I get to the need help slide, you know, branching out into that kind of extended network and thinking beyond what is traditional manufacturing is somewhere that we are always looking for help. This was just more in-depth data about our hackathon. Yes, we had a lot of sleepers, and we don't have a good area for that at the Institute. So that was a request by several participants. Next time, can we have somewhere to sleep? So that was great. But in the interest of time, I'm not going to dwell on this. I'm just going to move on. And then finally, in terms of next steps and help needed, our Digital Manufacturing Commons platform. This has been a big internal effort, millions of dollar investment from the Institute and UI Labs. We'll be launching this. We've been building it in partnership with GE for the last not quite 2 years, and we're going to be launching this at the end of this year. And so that's going to be a big, exciting deal. It's going to be seeded with a bunch of applications for doing data analysis, specifically on manufacturing data sets, including the many of the things that came out of the hackathon, as well as this reference data set that I mentioned earlier. So we're very excited about that, you know, and we're trying to get other people excited about that so that they can bring their data to the table and start to kickstart a little bit of a data economy. We're likely going to try and resubmit to the next round of NSF Spoke funding. We've got some lessons learned, and so we would love to talk with any of you about partnering on that and what that might look like. Getting feedback and help from the hub, of course, would be helpful as well. And then in 2017, we'll probably do another hackathon, or maybe a sort of a slightly bigger version, which would be some sort of prize challenge or a series of prize challenge around IIoT, the industrial Internet of Things. And so if you'd want to be a sponsor or a partner or involved in that somehow, that's going to be very exciting. And then finally, you know, we're continuing to do these pilot activities. We really see some of the work we're doing as tech transition opportunities and potentially commercialization opportunities for people who have interesting data sets or have interesting data applications and just need a channel to distribute it and get it out there. So with that, I'll stop, and if you have questions, holler now or catch me later. Okay, thanks.
Any questions? You know, we were talking to Melissa about prizes, and some of the academic places can't actually do prizes, we learned early this morning. So, you know, it'd be great. This is a way we could partner with you guys who can do prizes. So I think, Melissa, we should take a note of that one.
Well, it's a challenge for us as well because we've got a lot of government funds.
Oh, yeah.
Well,
that seems to be part of the issue, huh?
But the way I got around that.
Okay.
Already. That's my skill. The way that you do it is that you can give prizes, especially money, but it has to be to a student organization, not a student.
Yeah, right.
So most of them are involved, I mean, because they're millennials, most of them are involved in philanthropic organizations. You can also give to their, like, housing unit. So they could take that money and have a pizza party or whatever they want. So there are ways around that, but it's organizational. You can give it to organizations.
IGEM is a group that's out
Yep.
there that's an example
You can do that.
Put money into.
What we did is, you know, we connected with industry partners who were willing to sponsor the cash prizes, but then we also gave away institute memberships as prizes as well, which is interesting.
Oh, good, thanks for that. I think this might be the last one, Henry.
Yeah,
so
I'm
this-
between
the
you
onus
and
is on you to.
which
capstone.
So we're talking transportation.
This thing
at
seems
point.
to have a range of like
So he
1
said that-
degree,
that
right?
Columbus
Okay.
got 40 million. Columbus
Anyway,
Jeez.
thank you. It's great to be here. I'm actually standing in for Professor Jagadish, who has been leading this spoke. If there's one thing that Tesla and Google and Uber and Ford and GM and Toyota probably can agree on, in fact, I know they agree on, is that the next 10 years in surface transportation are probably going to be the most exciting in 2 generations. There's an enormous amount of change underway, and data science and data analytics lies at the, so I'm not within the 1 degree. Is this better? This one? The little guy.
It's the little guy that's doing everything.
Okay. So if I get the little guy, do I get everybody, or do I have to get?
You want to be here because that's the.
Okay, so I got to get. Does this one have a wider angle of reception? Okay, okay. So I don't know if you heard any of that, but data science and analytics lies at the epicenter of the transformation in surface transportation. And so why is that? Well, I mean, the change is being driven by a lot of things, but they certainly include very low-cost sensors, control systems. They include the fact that everybody on the planet now has this incredibly powerful location device and communication device. We're moving towards the idea of very intelligent guideways using these systems. We're looking at automated connected vehicles. And of course, we're looking at the need to try to move off of fossil fuels and into electricity. So you're going to have you're not hearing me? Okay. So you're moving it with the prospect of connecting a smart highway system, transportation system, to a smart grid. Now, all of this raises incredibly complicated analytical issues and data management issues. And in fact, it covers the entire spectrum of data analytics that are represented by the things that the hub is trying to deal with. But they're dealing with everything from the very technical issues of planning the system, operating the system, social issues, behavioral issues, pricing issues, and the whole management structure. Who owns the vehicles? How do you pay for the infrastructure if you don't have a gasoline tank? Do you want to start thinking about operating the highway system the way you operate the electric utility grid with ISOs? There is a whole series of really fundamental changes that are that are being offered up, which all depend in absolutely critical ways on the power of data gathering, management, and analytics. So what is the spoke here for the Midwest Data Hub doing for this? Well, this year we've been spending most of our time sort of looking for a capacity in the area and building it. And let me just talk about 3 specific things that are going on. One is the planning grant that went to the University of Indiana at Omaha, under Professor Nebraska. I'm sorry. Omaha is in Nebraska the last time I looked up. And Professor Gandhi is here. They're going to be putting together a series of partnerships for looking at big data innovations for bridge health. And in doing that, they're going to be putting together a very extensive partnership, including academics, industry, and government, with a series of workshops. The first one is going to be November 30th of this year, right? So he's got a GitHub site that can tell you more about it, but even better, he's sitting right over there, so if you want to find out about it, please contact him. The second two involve work at the University of Michigan, and this Midas group that Brian and I have been working on have put several $1 million into two really exciting projects. One is led by Dr. Flanagan, who's also here, and this is trying to get a handle on solving a lot of the basic data management problems that we've been talking about for transportation data. And there are huge amounts of data in various formats, particularly safety data, origin destination data. It's in a format that's often hard to get to, hard to use, hard to combine with other data. And so we're really excited about the team that Carol's putting together. Now, Melissa also mentioned the fact that the Department of Transportation is interested in trying to find ways of making better use of the data that they have, because they're facing the same problem with the national databases. And so Melissa and others, and I guess Carol, have been in conversations with the department to try to figure out how our community can help them, and certainly we're hoping that Carol's work will contribute to solutions. The second is a project led by Pascal von Huntering, who is looking at ways to basically transform public transportation based on data. And so the idea here is to find out where people are actually going, what are the origins and destinations. Can you now then design a on-demand transportation system that's public, that will optimize the use of high occupancy vehicles like buses and lower occupancy buses, vans and other vehicles, to solve the last mile problem. So the plan here is to experiment on the University of Michigan, that owns an enormous bus system, 55,000 trips per day, and then move out to Ann Arbor, and we're hoping to cities like Detroit. Again, in both of these cases, we're trying to build partnerships that bring in industry, and of course there are a lot of businesses that are keenly interested in the future of mobility and how their vehicles and their contribution to a system which will be some interesting combination of individually owned vehicles and publicly owned or third-party owned vehicles. So that's going to be a very interesting set of activities. So taking this resource and this really complicated set of problems, we're going to try to bring this community together next spring and try to define a path forward for this community on this incredibly complicated and interesting and important set of research problems. We're really hoping that we'll be reaching out to you, and I hope that you can help us identify potential participants. One thing we have going for us is the Department of Transportation ran a big smart cities competition that recently granted the winner, national winner, was Columbus, Ohio, which of course is in our region. But a number of cities in the Midwest contributed to that competition, and there's some spectacularly good thinking that went into those proposals, and so we're hoping to pick up on that. So please respond when we reach out to you to trying to put together this workshop next year. I have to end with an idea of getting a little adrenaline pumped when you keep talking to my friends in the Silicon Valley. They just can't imagine that any innovative transportation idea could come out of the Midwest. And I hope that we can make them very surprised. So, thank you.
Okay, that's great. Melissa, final words about the panel here?
Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for contributions. Great updates. I hope that gets everybody sort of thinking about new things to do across the spokes, how to join in. Everybody's open to having partnerships from whatever discipline you're in, come work in any of these thematic areas. So thank you again all for coming. You've got time now to convene with your spoke or working group as you wish. There's plenty of room, and we'll see you the next time. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. Please give Melissa and the staff and everything, and especially Candace, we're going to move terrific meeting.
So you're Joe, right? Yeah.